Suprabhat. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Awesome. Thank you. Welcome to Conrad, and thank you for being here, especially on a Thursday morning. My name is Ankit. I'm going to be hosting this fantastic event/workshop today. If you're in this room, chances are that you are already living through one of the most interesting, exciting, and slightly chaotic phases of modern engineering. AI isn't coming, as we all know, it's already here. It's already sitting inside your repos, your pull requests, your CI pipelines, and sometimes inside your nightmares, depending on who you are. Today is not so much about hype. It's about how real engineering teams are actually shipping in the AI era. Now, before we dive in, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Please put your phones on silent. Feel free to take photos, videos, whatever you'd like, but phones on silent, please. The washrooms are outside to your right-hand side, and we will have time for networking and deep dives later over conversations and lunch. This event is curated by CodeRabbit, a platform many of you already know for helping teams review, reason about, and ship code faster with guardrails. A big round of applause to the entire team at CodeRabbit. So with that, let's get started. To open the day, we'd like to start with someone who actually doesn't need an introduction, and I hope traffic wasn't too mean for him this morning, but I'll give one anyway. Our keynote speaker sits at the intersection of scale, speed, and real-world complexity. As CTO of Swiggy, he is helping power systems that operate at massive scale under constant pressure where reliability isn't optional, it's existential. Please welcome Madhusudan Rao, CTO at Swiggy, who will be speaking on how Swiggy is using AI to generate and validate code. Let's have a big round of applause for Madhusudan.
Hey everyone. Hope I'm audible. And I'm going to keep this brief. I typically, when I'm in the audience in such forums, I want to ask a few questions. So if any of you have that, we'll leave time for that. Quickly, I lead technology at Swiggy, and I'm here to talk about like a very specific problem that probably all of us share, which is our teams are writing code at a pace that's faster than ever before. And our ability to manage that code has, at least in my view, not kept pace. And this is a bottleneck that we hit at Swiggy. And this also meant we had to look at a lot of tools, which is where we also bet on CodeRabbit. And I'll walk you through what our journey was and share our lessons from that. And hopefully that'll help you design your own AI plus human engineering model. So, I think many of you may be familiar with Swiggy, but I'll just still spend like a minute on what we do just so that you understand the scale we operate in. Swiggy started out as like a food delivery app in 2014, and today we are a multi-category on-demand convenience platform. We serve customers convenience through food delivery, dining out, quick commerce with Instamart, and a few other bets. But overall, in terms of scale, we deliver millions of orders per day and touch millions of customers, partners, have millions of interactions every day. Now, what all of this means is that we've got significant scale, and we need to be pretty reliable. And at the scale and the timelines that we operate, where the time to fulfill an order is pretty small, your systems can't misbehave. And even if they do, which invariably happens, the time for you to detect and mitigate needs to be extremely low. And just to also give you a sense of like the pace that the space we operate in expects, right? And this is not the delivery speed. This is the speed of delivering solutions. if you're familiar, solutions or apps like Toying, Snack, Pharma, all of these went from idea to launch in under a month. And these are fairly complex initiatives. And this is where, for us, the ability to ship quickly, reliably, and make sure that things work at scale is, like most other businesses, really critical. But the time for us to detect and mitigate an issue is even lower. So that's the big tension that we have when we are shipping anything, right? Which is reliability versus velocity. And most of this will focus on that. And before we go into the details of code and code review, the key, like I would encourage all of you to zoom out and think about a few things. One is, do you have like a lot of fragmentation in technology? If you have that, invest in standardizing your technology footprint so that humans as well as AI agents can do a better job. Two, have the right risk mitigations that reduce the blast radius of any bad release. This could be obviously very straightforward and trivial things like testing, canary, deployment strategies, go-to-market, any sort of AI agents which go and compare various metrics and automatically roll forward or roll back feature flags, any of these things. This is an investment I would encourage all of you to make because things will go wrong. The ability for you to get ahead of those is what will allow you to either write a bunch of root cause analysis on or correction of errors on why something happened versus actually continuing to focus on how you can deliver more value to your customers. And lastly, invest in things that can improve the experience of a developer, not just while developing, but also while maintaining things. This could be simple log analysis, getting all the insights into an incident that was raised by your incident or alerting system. So these foundations matter before you accelerate with AI. Just like how any sort of a fast automobile needs to have, like, for example, like a F1 car needs to have head and neck support, seat belts, brakes. Just speed alone is not going to work so well for us, right? So this is something that I would encourage you. Now diving into code gen, right? Like most companies, we leaned into leveraging Gen AI for development. And to be honest, even at the very initial days, it worked out reasonably well for routine boilerplate code generation, for standard patterns, auto-completing within an IDE. And now engineers are using this for agentic development. So overall, productivity has gone up, prototyping's gotten a lot faster, and standard building against standard patterns has become pretty trivial. But the issue is that with all of these things, we are seeing a lot more code being written, but humans still have to review it. And this is an observation we have had. A part of this may just be universal. I've also seen similar reports from CodeRabbit, but it also probably depends on how well your context is engineered. We see more issues and definitely a lot more duplication in code compared to which are generated by AI compared to what a human generates. And that's actually like the tension, which is while it's accelerated the speed at which you can churn out code, the code has more duplication as well as more risks and issues. And we need to make sure that we adopt the right tools that help us with managing this almost impedance mismatch. And this this actually led to what became like the most uh, rate limiting step for us in our SDLC, which is we had code that was being, this is almost like you got a much bigger pipe which is pumping stuff in, kind of like our traffic, but not enough guardrails and gateways to make that work smoothly. Just like our traffic, our PRs piled up, engineers were scrambling. Instead of zooming out, looking at whether the right trade-offs have been done, the right domain modeling and architectural choices are being made, we're more focused on details, which ideally should be handed off to AI. And also obviously led to a lot of fatigue, and we started seeing difference in performances across different teams based on both the complexity of the work as well as noise and speed of the PRs being generated. So overall, just in terms of how we do our PRs, we have two humans reviewing. Sorry, I'm assuming everyone knows PR. PR is pull request, and we had two humans reviewing every single request, and this is the problem we ended up with, where now suddenly code was generated which was sitting there sometimes for days without actually getting enough comments, and some of it was also slipping into production. And this is where we actually, so this is what made us look for tools. We tried a few tools. Some of them were operating with a context window of just the files that were changed, which was reasonable, probably like a step up over like the Sonar Cubes and equivalent, right? But wasn't really something that we needed. So instead of just looking at diffs, what CodeRabbit, what differentiated at that time CodeRabbit for us was that it actually built out like a full code tree with the dependencies, and in some way was able to understand the impact of the changes. And things like security, which we've always had as a big shift left initiative, honestly, we hadn't shifted left enough. That was also a bonus that we got here. And while you can unleash a lot of code review tools, the key for me is it actually synthesizing all of these things in a human readable format? Two, is the noise to signal to noise ratio favorable? And lastly, is it allowing me to build workflows that allow, let's say, some nitpicks to actually be skipped while allowing you to actually block on things that the tool considers critical. Lastly, all of this needs to understand the Swiggy way of doing things, which means instead of actually building out the same error handling in every piece of code, using the shared library that we have in Golang that can iterate, or similar one for Kafka and so on, right? So this was where CodeRabbit was a big differentiator for us, and I'll tell you how we roll this out, because that's also probably played a role in the cultural shift, where when we rolled this out, this was a third layer of review. Of course, this was the first one happening, and we still had two humans doing this. And it was an automatic one. The moment you raise a PR, this runs, and before any human looks at it, you get a bunch of comments. That's changed a little bit. I'll go into it later. We enforced this for a few repos, then rolled it out to like all the 250 of them that we have. And based on the feedback and almost like the no-op that was happening in the second human review, we were able to actually drop one human reviewer, and now we have CodeRabbit plus one human reviewer. And the key is just with any tool, right? While you can adopt it, make it available to your team, I would encourage all of you to monitor how it's being used. How many times is the tool actually generating valid things which are being skipped by the engineers because they're in a hurry to ship? What are the places where the tool did not identify something which was caught by the next reviewer? Now, of course, CodeRabbit handles that directly. And the last part is if the human reviewer also missed this and there was a minor production incident, how are you closing this loop? So with all of these things, and we also shared a lot of requirements on what we wanted in the dashboard, and that was a fairly good partnership. We saw improvements, and this is what overall allowed like a pretty active partnership, which allowed us to find success with CodeRabbit. Now, I want to talk about the impact. This is all like great, but impact-wise, we've had like over 100K pull requests reviewed. We've had about 10K risks flagged, and these are the kind of risks where if it had gone to production, would definitely have been a bug or a product or a performance hit or a security scare. And as I mentioned, we've dropped one person reviewing the code, but more importantly, the cycle time from raising the PR to getting the first set of feedback happens today on the IDE. It's not happening 5 minutes after you've raised it, which has also made this loop faster and tighter. And lastly, because this is an AI bot which is generating comments against the standard set of instructions that we have, it doesn't depend on an engineer having a bad day where they missed something and caught it in the second review. And this actually reduced the number of back and forths that we had for a given PR by almost 30%. So overall, whichever way you look at it, the impact was pretty material. And more than just numbers here, this actually helped our engineers a lot more. Like just in terms of senior engineers who were babysitting through a lot of the issues or guiding people on, hey, you're not handling this in the way that we do at Swiggy and so on. They were able to focus on the right driving clarity in cases where there was a lot of ambiguity in how we approach a solution, the right architectural choices, or things like trade-offs that we must take in terms of how we ship something. And in terms of the junior engineers, it actually put them in psychologically like a safe space, because it's not someone judging them saying, hey, here are like the 50 things you've done wrong. It's where they were getting this feedback from a tool which they could immediately address, and more importantly, bake into their own personal learning. And I think this combination of quick feedback, consistent feedback, as well as risk being reduced, of course, and quick learning for our engineers, that's honestly, I would say, is what making CodeRabbit stick for us. In terms of a few key lessons that I want to share is, one, absolutely embrace AI. I don't think it's a choice at all, but if you do believe it's a choice, I would say please go and embrace it. But make sure that you're setting up the right guardrails. Without the right guardrails, you're heading for a crash. You'll just be shipping things which are worse faster. Two, have the right standards, whether it's in terms of technologies, playbooks, whatever it is, because those also feed into how you can actually give inputs to any tool. This could be your CloudMD or could be specific set of instructions that you would give CodeRabbit, any of these things. Lastly, the third one is today we still find value in having that human in the loop. So this tells us that reviews, at least as of today, is still like a activity that humans do better. Can change, but right now, at least this is our take. And our best engineers are not focusing on whether the null checks are handled best. Of course, those are important, but our best reviewers are actually focusing on whether this is solving the right problem, whether this is actually solving this in the best way possible with the right NFRs, non-functional requirements, and observability and all of those things. And lastly, the bottleneck that I was talking about between generation of code and handling of reviews actually happens in all other areas as well. So make sure that you're investing in an AI-first dev experience, whether it's something as mundane as log analysis, observability, alerting, recovery, incident management, all of these things. One takeaway, if I want to part with that, is I don't think code generation is going to be the differentiator for engineering anymore. It's important, but I think the smarts or the differentiation lies in how you can govern, manage, and have it perform reliably. So that's probably where we all should be focusing on. And again, the areas that you should definitely look at would be like incident management, coding, code reviews we've already discussed, but knowledge management, all of these things, pretty important. And I think this is what has helped us go from moving fast and breaking things early days to now moving fast, but with a lot more reliability. Thank you. People have any questions, happy to answer.
So you touched upon governance and probably talked about context engineering as well, right? So we're also trying to build an on-call agent that you touched upon, doing a log analysis or incident or RCA for a particular incident that you receive. The one challenge that we are trying to solve is that you have a lot of legacy code built in, and not all of them are updated with the latest documentation about what is architecture, a lot of tribal knowledge, and you would have written a design doc probably in a Google Drive, whatever. So how did you drive this within the organization to probably backfill all those areas with good documentation that probably serve these agents well? And beyond coding, you also touched upon other areas, right? For instance, what is the impact, or how well you are probably an RCA analysis for an incident management that happens today? Can you touch a little bit on governance, or how did you actually drive efficiently within your organization?
Sure. So the first part of the question was for legacy services, how did you make sure you have the right documentation? Short answer, no, we didn't drive our engineers to do that. As an engineer, that was always like, I did believe in documentation, but it was more on why we made certain trade-offs versus like literally documenting what is already there in the code. So there, in fact, for a lot of workloads, we have provisioned throughput with GPUs, right? So we actually leverage that to create some of these documentation. Of course, also pull in documentation on the trade-offs that were made, which to a large extent are still there. And we also have a fairly seasoned team. So we have a good enough tribal knowledge base where if there are gaps, whether it is just by pulling in info from Slack, Google Chat from way back, or docs or wiki, we are able to piece them together. So have we done like the best possible job there? Definitely not. But that's something that we are now making a lot more progress thanks to AI than we were before. On your second question about incident management, we've done a few things. One is built out instrumentation for any time anything changes in Swiggy. And this is not just some code being released, but a feature flag being changed, an A/B test being dialed up or down, a config that the field business team changes, all of these things, or some merchandising that changes the layout on the app. All of these things feed into like this one place that we call timeline. And we've got all our incidents, of course, all the other metrics, like we use Prometheus and CloudWatch. So all those also are used, and this is where pulling in the right context and having any incident, and of course we've got like the call graphs which are automatically built out. All of these things allow you to like update any incident that was raised with a possible set of reasons. Or even when someone reports saying, hey, I'm seeing this on like a central channel that we have, this immediately kicks in and updates it. So it gives you like a good place to start. We went, this was only about 45% accurate until 5-6 months ago. Today we are almost at like 80% accuracy there and improving.
So that is one part of it. So do you actually see even today, right? Because today on Snack, for example, did you try SDD or something like that, which enabled you to have better constitution and avoid a lot of these, right? Which could also be engineering patterns that probably people should take away. That's something I want to understand if you see a difference. The second is specific to this PR side, right? The whole reinforcement learning, right? How much improvement did you see in the code comments that is coming based on missed comments or what you found as incidents? How did you feed it back to the RAG of CodeRabbit, and how did it actually have an effect? Right?
I think David can answer the second one, but
I want your actual answer in terms of how do you see it really?
Yeah, we actually saw it. In fact, I'll share one incident. We've also shared this maybe in a blog or something where I briefly alluded to this. There are a bunch of standard libraries that we have which handle things like back off, error handling, fallbacks, various things, right, for network calls. Now, AI code can generate it, or actually, that's the first question. I won't go there yet. But earlier, the kind of comments that we used to see, if let's say a new engineer who doesn't know yet about this library handles all of this themselves, CodeRabbit was not raising any comments about this. But today, based on what our senior engineers have said, saying, hey, you're doing this yourself, you should be using this Go Commons library for this. Now, we actually see CodeRabbit. In fact, that's the personalization part of CodeRabbit for me. I mean, obviously comes from RL and whatever else they're doing. Yeah.
To something like a design.md type of a thing, which is more permanent, or is it just having it in its own database?
It's both. It's both, because just purely from like code review standpoint, we are not doing anything. It's just a human reviewer typing that out, and that's being learned by CodeRabbit. Yeah. Not for these things, but again, for network library and other things where there are like a standard set of things that we expect a solution to use. Or things like, hey, just don't use cache to reduce latency here. There are some trade-offs there, right? Those are actually passed in as either Claude skill files, all of those things. Both at a company level as well as repository level. Not just top, but even the specific repositories have maybe something that's very specific to let's say like a driver app which works with poor network, the battery life needs to be longer. There, the set of instructions may be very different from what's there for a consumer app. Yeah. 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 To a large extent, yes. To a large extent. It's not foolproof though.
Yeah, thanks for explaining all your engineering experiences with CodeRabbit. So just I wanted to understand whether you have fit CodeRabbit in the architectural design phase.
David and I were talking about this 2 days ago in our office. That's our aspiration because when you build the entire index of our code base, you should be able to do something of that sort. We'll see where this goes, but yeah, that's something that should definitely be possible.
Yeah, that's what, if you have any experience of how you have handled the engineering, basic engineering principles like separation of concerns, modularity, and all those things at the design level, how did you validate? And you can throw some light on that.
Yeah, we don't validate that with CodeRabbit right now. I'm talking about like domain separation. I'm not talking about within a class whether code is being repeated or over-engineering. I'm not talking about that, but trade-offs in which domain should this piece of business logic belong in? Are these two domains extremely chatty? Is this missing like a microkernel? These kind of things are actually done. The good part about our culture has been we've created a lot of documentation with every initiative that we have solutioned, with the trade-offs, everything written out. So when we just feed this into any sort of knowledge management tool, we've got a couple of them in-house, that actually, in fact, we are at a stage where given a PRD, it can generate like 70% of the solution doc. Of course, that's just the starting point and not what you run with, which already handles some of these things simply because of the knowledge base already being there in all the solution docs that we have. You're not doing, so this is not us distilling this knowledge separately. This is knowledge that is getting distilled from the existing set of docs that we already have.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Lakshmi Narayana from Capillary Technologies. I have two questions. One is, as you mentioned, there are Swiggy way of doing things from what is already there as the industry way of doing things. How would
Sorry. I think that's maybe the wrong takeaway. We've got abstractions or convenience libraries or standard libraries which pretty much mimic what industry patterns are. We are not saying that, hey, we won't care about null checks. You're just saying...
No, not like that, but there could be certain best practices out there, but there could be certain things that work in our domain set of things which we take as an assumptions or trade-offs between what we eventually want to. So how do you personalize that on CodeRabbit platform, saying ki you don't hallucinate based on industry set of things? This is what matters to Swiggy in terms of code review, and how do you get that learning? Because you told ki there are two manual reviewers, and there would have been certain KTs or they have been trained in Swiggy environment for a longer duration and they might know what is to be reviewed. But something like a CodeRabbit needs to have that KT or certain way of understanding what matters a lot for Swiggy and review accordingly to it. That's the first question of it. And the second part is, once we have done this kind of personalization and where you mentioned you were able to remove one reviewer and get these all benefits, right? How did we put those guardrails in the SDLC process? I know CodeRabbit will do an automated review for you, but how do you ensure those review comments are addressed and those are still blocking your PR so that no one is just resolving them for the namesake and getting it to it? So how are you ensuring in SDLC lifecycle these are taken care and then only it gets shipped forward?
Yeah, So one, in terms of personalization, I think that's something that's coming out of the box with CodeRabbit for at least us. How are we institutionalizing this knowledge goes into the CloudMD files. 3, how are we making sure that people aren't skipping comments? In fact, I covered that in one of the slides. This is an important governance mechanism to have, because if you give this tool and people don't care about what comments are being generated and just ship it anyways, you're not going to see any value from the tool. So that governance step is important, and you need to use that to close loop with the teams who are probably not understanding how best to leverage this tool.
Yeah, so speaking of guardrails, how can I make sure that my code remains secure? Because if I am exposing my code to CodeRabbit, the proprietary of that code could be gone if it accesses any public LLM or CodeRabbit's LLM. I don't know. Like, do I have the ability to have my locally hosted LLM to be used? And also, can it be vendor agnostic? Like today, I want to go with 4.0, GPT 4.0. Tomorrow, I want to go with Bedrock. So what is the flexibility there?
I think this is a better question for the CodeRabbit team because
Okay.
but I can tell you, at least contractually, leaking of code and confidentiality are covered. Now, I can hazard a guess where forcing any tool to use a certain model may be suboptimal for efficiency and cost reasons, but if there are any specific reasons, then maybe you should chat with CodeRabbit.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey, we are out of time. Maybe last question.
Hey Madhu, thanks. Thanks for the talk. I'm Sarat from BigBasket. The question I have is, we are seeing AI efficiency gains, quality gains, and various stages of the SDLC. But from the level at which you operate, are you able to quantify or even visualize the net improvement in engineering efficiency for the entire technology teams? And how do you measure it, and how do you think about it?
Yeah, great question. In fact, this is something we've been doing now for a while. So this was not something we started because of AI. We measure things like, we classify initiatives into how many domains it touches, how many teams it needs to participate, how large the initiative is. Based on that, we classify it into various categories. And then we measure how much time it's taking us from idea to launch for initiatives in each of these categories. And this has, simple, like if you make your systems a lot more leaner, reduce the fragmentation of systems. We went from like 2,500 microservices to 500, 600. That itself gives you like a boost in speed, and measure it in terms of both idea to launch as well as number of dev days spent in the entire life cycle. And lastly, the number of initiatives that we are shipping for each of these categories in a given time frame. A time frame that we typically measure is a quarter. So all of these are actually trending in the right direction. And I'm guessing for if any of you measures these things with all this adoption, I think it will be going in a similar trajectory for most companies.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Have a bigger round of applause for Madhusudan Rao, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you, Madhusudan, for that extremely hands-on, extremely insightful session. We now move on from AI being used in a large engineering organization to how teams can actually ship with confidence when AI starts writing code alongside humans. Our next speaker is someone who works closely with engineering leaders across companies, stages, and geographies, seeing firsthand what works and what needs fixing. Please welcome Michael Fox, VP GTM at CodeRabbit, who's going to talk to us about shipping code with guardrails in the AI era. Over to you, Michael.
Awesome. First off, thanks everyone for making the time this morning. Really excited to be here, and I think we just listened to a great presentation from Madhu. It's been an honor to work with Swiggy as closely as I have. The journey with them started roughly a year ago, and we saw the success there. So my goal today is to take some of the questions that you just had about context engineering How do you get AI ready? And kind of double click into those so that you feel a little bit more comfortable with our solution, and then think a little bit more abstractly in terms of where the industry is going and where we see it going. Just a little bit about me. I am from the US. I live in the Boston area. Big Boston, New England sports fans. Go Patriots for the football playoffs this week. I come from a dev tooling, infrastructure background, some security. It's my first time here in Bangalore and in India, so I've been very excited to be here, like I said, and thank you for the warm welcome overall. I want to double click into what we're seeing, right? And so Madhu talked a little bit about this, but more holistically, this isn't just an AI problem. This problem has existed for a long time where developer time was being sunk into code reviews. And I don't mean sunk into it. It's a good thing to do code reviews. There's good knowledge sharing. There's learning opportunities. But the reality is it's a very time-consuming activity. And when things aren't done well, and you just say, looks good to me, ship it, bugs and issues get into the production environment. And we all know the later in the development lifecycle that these issues go, the harder and more costly it is to fix them. And so that's exactly what we're seeing. The other thing that we saw before Gen AI is the pipelines that we have, right? We have CI/CD pipelines, we have linters and static scanners and rules that are run alongside this. Developers hate going through it, right? Something breaks, there's friction. It's not a great developer experience. On top of that, the code review, how many lines of code can we really review? There was a study by SmartBear, which is a QA software, if you're familiar with like Swagger Hub. They did this really detailed report that said 400 lines of code is about the maximum a human being could do before the performance starts to degrade. 400 lines is not a lot, especially for certain changes, and so that's a big issue. The other thing that we were seeing, and Madhu talked a little bit about this, is structurally. Teams do not have consistent ways of reviewing code. Some are doing it not at all, and they just YOLO it and ship it, usually internal projects, but it still happens. Others have like a semi-formal peer review where there's maybe I ping someone on Slack and say, can you just take a quick look at this and kind of give me the thumbs up? Or there's the more comprehensive review, which we heard from Madhu, which is like 2 or 3 human reviewers for those mission critical changes. Regardless, there is no standard. So as an engineering leader, I want to create consistency. I want to create standards. That'll help my engineers understand what they should be doing. It'll help them learn. And so that's something that we're a big proponent of, and we want to see happen. Now, Madhu also mentioned this, right? There's a lot of diversity. Most organizations that I speak with, their entry point into AI is around the AI dev tooling, like the code gen, the Cursors, the Claudes, the Geminis. And this is a groundswell. It's being brought up from the development teams. And so we see a lot of diversity, right? It's similar to the IDE space where a lot of engineers will fight it out and say which IDE is the best IDE. So we're seeing a lot of diversity on the left-hand side. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think let the developers have the freedom to choose the tools that work best for them. On the flip side, we still need guardrails. And so how do you implement guardrails when there's such diversity across that ecosystem? And so that's what Madhu talked about with CodeRabbit. It's more of a centralized deployment. It sits directly in the Git workflow, whether it's GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps. And we are automatically running the review, creating that consistent standard that you need. So the way I look at it and the way our team looks at it is it's actually a complementary investment and an accelerator to any investment that's being done in code gen. And I can talk for days about what I've seen. If you asked me 3 months ago which was the de facto standard, I would have said, oh, everyone loves Cursor. If you asked me a month ago, I would have said everyone's using Claude Code. If you ask me today, I'm hearing a lot more about open code. Every other day it's changing. And so you have to be prepared to give the developers that flexibility, right? Let them choose the tool that comes out that's best served for that task, but do it within guardrails and within constraint. And as Madhu mentioned, and you'll see reports on this, right? There's a bunch of dev tools that are now generating more code, which means the bottleneck is shifting for how fast can I write the code to how fast can I review the code and get it production ready. And so this is something that a lot of engineering teams are struggling with. Just the sheer amount of code. How do they kind of slow things down to make sure it's secure, it's safe, and it's ready to go? And so this is where CodeRabbit comes in. There's 2 or 3 ways to use CodeRabbit. So we do have the IDE integration, so anything that's a VS Code derivative, Cursor, so forth. We also have a CLI. The CLI is unlocking tremendous power and flexibility across things like Claude Code, right? Claude writes my code, The CLI runs, it reviews the code, it feeds the feedback directly into Claude, and then it fixes it on the fly. That's really condensing the overall life cycle, and that's really shifting everything left to the developer. So a very effective workflow. We also have the central Git workflow that I just talked about. So in the case of GitHub, it's a GitHub app. It's installed centrally at the organization level, and then you can choose to have which repositories you want monitoring it. The way I think about it, and I think this is an important distinction, is while it is serving the benefit of dev managers, engineering leaders, it's not necessarily a dev tool. I think of it as more of a platform tool, right? You install it centrally, and everyone goes through it, kind of similar to the CI/CD pipeline. So I think there's a lot of really good questions about context engineering and how this works and where to get the information from. So hopefully we can walk through this together. This is kind of a marketecture, I'll call it, but it's kind of hard to see here. But on the bottom left-hand side, you'll see the integration. So this is the client side. Again, you're integrating into the CLI, the VS Code plugin, and then also the Git provider. So that's our entry point. So you need that integration to happen before we can provide value. Once that happens, every single time you raise a new pull request or a merge request, it'll automatically do a first pass of that code review on your behalf. And I'm going to show you live demo examples here in terms of the value it can bring and how it can help your engineering teams move faster and safer. We build a sandbox. So for each individual review, there's an individual sandbox that gets created. This sandbox is completely isolated and ephemeral. So once the review is done, all the context gets completely wiped. So from a security perspective, a very kind of really well-designed and architected security architecture. So we clone a copy of the repo. So it is a shallow clone of the repository that's under review. We try and understand the contents of that. So we build a code graph analysis, understand the definitions and so forth that are in the actual files that you have there. We also run static scanners, linters, SAS tools. So Madhu mentioned SonarQube. We can take the output from those tools, run it through the models, and then provide really rich information. And I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. There's also the ability for you to customize the experience with CodeRabbit. For those that are early on in the journey, one thing that I highly recommend is looking at standardizing, right? And Madhu talked a little bit about this, but standardizing, how do you make sure your team is AI ready? Making sure you have good documentation. Not only documentation in this traditional sense, but those agent files, those markdown files that you get, whether it's cursor rules or Claude Code MD, you need to set that up. Setting up that infrastructure is the foundation for having a successful AI deployment. We also encourage what we call path-based instructions, so looking at individual file paths and telling us very specifically, how do you think about the specific function or files within the function, or function within the file, sorry. We also have like an on-demand, what we call learnings. Now, I don't really love the term learnings because learnings makes it sound like that we're training the models. We're not training the models. It's natural language statements that through the chat, so through your integration with CodeRabbit, we're able to kind of build up a knowledge base. We index it in a vector database, call that into context wherever relevant, and then that helps kind of personalize the experience altogether. And that was an example that Madhu gave where at first it was calling, it wasn't commenting out about the specific library, and then he said, no, we want to use a certain library. So that's how you educate CodeRabbit to work within your environment. We also can integrate with a bunch of MCP tools and servers. So we act as an MCP client. You can integrate any server that you have, whether it's Notion, so dev tooling like Sentry for error handling and so forth. All of that can be brought into the context window as necessary. We also integrate with issue tracking. So a lot of developers, obviously, it would be great to just go wake up in the morning and vibe code. The reality is, I have to take a ticket or an issue, work off that spec, and go from there. And so pulling that context in is super valuable for the development teams and the developer to understand, did I actually accomplish the task at hand? We do use the frontier models. So we partner with OpenAI and Anthropic, and we use the latest and greatest models. And David, who's here, is our head of AI. So he looks at, very strategically which models are performing best. He runs and evaluates the evals and looks at all of the information that we can gather from our analysis to then put that in and make sure that we are using the best in breed models. The other thing I'll say is it's very unlike the code gen side. You don't pick the model, right? We don't want to give the engineer one more thing, an additional cognitive load. So we handle all that for you. We know based on the evals what type of model works best for what type of review. We actually also, it's not denoted here, but we kind of have like this intelligent gateway that breaks down each review request into multiple tasks, and then it federates it across the two providers and across the multiple models. This is great for us from a business side because it allows us to keep the margins high, but it also allows the end user to get the best experience because they're getting the best model for the best task at hand. The output is what you'll see on the PR. So this is what I'm going to demo in a little bit, but you'll have the review. So we do a summary and a walkthrough to help the dev to orient their self to what's happening in the individual PR. We provide actionable suggestions and comments. So directly, the developer can accept it right then and there in the PR, or they can bring it down locally and then just do a separate commit. We also provide AI prompt agents, or prompts for the agents. And so what that allows you to do is have this integrated workflow where it consistently goes from feedback back into Claude or Cursor or whatever you're using. And then we have a bunch of other governance checks like pre-merge checks and making sure documentation, doc strings, and unit tests are there. I know that's something that developers often overlook or they kind of, they don't do the best job of. And so we can kind of do that last mile of delivery. I won't spend a ton of time here, but this is the context window. So when you talk about CodeRabbit, what makes CodeRabbit a market leader? What makes us differentiated? It's because this context engineering piece is so important. And I think we pride ourselves on that. We've done a great job. We've invested a lot of time, resources, engineering that goes into this. And this context engineering piece is the differentiator. It's why companies like Swiggy are having such success. And this will continue to get better over time as we learn collectively, both internally and with our customers. We also don't just post whatever comes out of the LM. We have various agents in the background that help make sure that the quality of the review are as sound as possible. So that's our review agent. We have a verification agent to make sure that things like the output and that maybe there's additional libraries that it needs to go find, and we can run different types of tooling in that sandbox to go validate that. And then the output is only going to be the most meaningful output. So we'll go through a couple examples here. I know I don't have my laptop in front of me. I was hoping to run maybe the CLI and an actual PR, but for the purposes of today, I'm just going to show you some screenshots. So this is the first thing. So we put out a report that Madhu referenced a little while ago, and I recommend everyone in this room to download it, take a look at it. It's really insightful in terms of the content, real-world data. But here you'll see, AI tooling is generating a lot more code, a lot more PRs per user, and then also a lot more issues. And so this is where this comes into play. How do we de-risk that aspect of the Gen AI tooling generating more? So what we do when you get into the PR is we provide a summarization. And you'll see here on the next 2 slides, we summarize what's in the code chain. So this is at the top of the PR. In this case, new features, some documentation, some style, and some chores. But it allows me to understand, okay, what went into this PR? What do I need to focus on as a reviewer? Which files were changed? And then it gives me a summary of all the changes. So in certain cases, it might just be a minor formatting issue. Well, I'm not going to waste my time on that. There's a new component that was added. I probably want to take a deeper look into that specific change in that specific file. So it allows me to orient my time to do the review as effective as possible. We also provide things like sequence diagrams that allow you to understand the topology and the linking between the different components and the data flow between them. Again, helping me understand the system a lot more coherently. At the bottom, it's a little hard to see here, but we also can do relationship mapping between other related PRs, or if you have your integration with Jira, issue tracking. We can say there's other issues that may be affected by this PR change. And then linked issues on the bottom right, you can see here we're basically saying, did the developer accomplish everything that was associated in ticket 51? So again, this is just a summary. The way I view it is a map. It's my map of how do I come in and do a guide and review as a reviewer. This makes me a lot more efficient and effective. The other thing that we're seeing, we talked about the AI slop. And so, well, how do we mitigate for this? How do we make sure that critical issues are not getting into the production environment? And so you'll see here on the right-hand side, this one actually, I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with Open Data Hub. So this is a project, it's an open source project, sponsored by Red Hat, so a lot of Red Hat engagement. They've been working with the software for a while. They have it on OpenShift, if anyone's familiar with the OpenShift distribution of Kubernetes. But here you can see, we identified an issue directly in the comment, in the PR. We not only highlight the issue, we say it's a pretty critical issue, and then we explain exactly why. And what you'll see here is, basically the handler was preventing the cleanup. Well, You can see the recommendation CodeRabbit made. You can see at the bottom it gave an AI prompt that the user could take and make that fix right there on the fly. And then you also see at the very, very bottom that the developer is saying, wow, this is actually a good catch. So the developer knowingly committed this code or submitted the code for a PR without seeing this, right? And so this is, one of the fallacies, I think, of AI. A lot of the developers are now trusting it so much that they're not reviewing it. And so, even common things like this are slipping by and causing detrimental impacts downstream. This is just an example of the different types of errors that we're seeing. And so in the report that, I recommend you download, it talks about logical errors and syntactical errors and security vulnerabilities. So there's a whole bunch of different things that we are catching on the fly. And these are just a couple of examples on them. Very simple example, this top one on the top right, looking at like a function, some error handling that was being done here. And you can see on line, 584, developers saying, look, I'm trying to accomplish task not found. And for whatever reason has a 400 status code. Sure, 400 is a valid status code. So if I'm just scanning this and saying, make sure it's valid, it probably would just say, yeah, looks good to me. The reality is it's the wrong designation. And so it's a very simple example, but it shows you how we not are only just scanning the code, but logically understanding the intent behind the code, which in this case is task not found, should be 404. The one on the bottom here is looking at some proxy configuration, and so I thought this was an interesting one. Again, you can see at the bottom of the screen there, the developer then subsequently takes that, makes another commit, and addresses that situation. So you're not only just getting feedback and noise, you're getting real impact. And these are across massive open source projects, organizations like Swiggy, and others that you'll see in a bit. Security vulnerabilities. No one wants to talk about this. Everyone says, I have my Sonar Cube, I have my SDLC, security scans, I got Sneak. Guess what? It still gets through. There's risk anytime you shift security to the left. I spend a bunch of time in the security space. The developers will look at the feedback. If it's too much feedback, they ignore it. And so that's risk to your business. What we do is we act as that last line of defense. So as you're going through the pull request, we're running those splinters and scanners in the sandbox. And in this example here, you can see actually this person, this is an open source repo, they were doing something with Firebase, which is a Google service, and they just left everything in plain text. So in theory, the system is compromised. And so what we recommend here is obviously removing the file from version control, add a whole new file, use variables, delete and rotate your credentials. This happens more time than you'd like. I work with thousands of customers throughout the year, and I see this in the real world. And people literally ping me on Slack saying, you saved me. So these are good examples. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things that I've seen too, different packages with Go and CVEs that are 9+. So it's something that you need to be aware of. And your security team will love it too. So it's a little win for them as well. This is the dashboard that Madhu. There's many different panels. I just wanted to give a little taste. So this is our web app. But what it does is it breaks down the different types of issues based on severity, and then also the type of what was the issue? Was it functional? Was it syntactical? Was it a security issue? Is it around data and scalability? So it gives you that breakdown. So as an engineering manager, leader, you have direct visibility into where can I train and coach and enable my teams to do better. All right, this one I'm excited for, and I might get a little slap on the wrist for this. This is not public just yet, but it's coming very soon. So there's a question, I forget who asked it, about, well, how do you shift this left? And by shift left, I don't mean to the IDE. How do you ensure that they're actually implementing the thing that they should be implementing? And what we found is that engineers are not the best, not all engineers are the best at writing the prompts. And so there's a lot of inefficiencies. They write the prompt, they get rid of it, they rewrite it, and it costs a lot of money because of the token usage. So we're building a planning agent. The planning agent basically will be and provide you with an implementation plan on, I have this spec, I want to go implement it, give me a plan, give me an output that I can just give to Claude, and it'll do it for me. And so you basically are encouraging this full agentic system. End to end, CodeRabbit's going to help me implement my plan, Cursor, Claude will write the code, and then we'll validate that on the back end with CodeRabbit. And this is just an example on the right or left-hand side. It's kind of hard to see, but it walks through its thought process in terms of why it did what it did and why it's made the judgment call in terms of the prompt. And then it provides you the actual prompt for each task. So you can decide to run these independently or as an aggregate. I'm super excited about this. I think this is going to be a really big game-changing project. Our team's actively working on it, so it should be released hopefully in the next month. but there's already some examples in the open source if you're interested. By now, I hope that it's been conveyed that we are the #1 kind of AI platform review, and I think we're not just an AI platform review. I want to make sure we're building a governance layer here across all of AI. So we've been working with a lot of cool customers. I know a handful are here today, so I'm very grateful for that. It's been an honor to work with you and learn from you, and we're just getting started. We also were on stage at the SEC presentation with NVIDIA. So Jensen got on stage, and I was really excited about this. One, I personally worked with NVIDIA, so for me it was kind of really rewarding to see a year's worth of work go into this, but also to have our name aside NetApp and CrowdStrike. These are like industry titans in their space in cybersecurity and data management. So something that's really cool. I'll skip over this because I think Madhu did a better job than I will in terms of this. The other thing just to think about before we wrap up here, we got a few minutes left, is we talk a lot about faster reviews, better code quality, reduced context switching, but there's a lot that are under the surface, under the carrot, cute little pun, where you're getting your team better knowledge, you're reducing tech debt, better security as we talked about, and then hopefully, as Madhu mentioned, better development sentiment internally, right? They're happier, they feel more safe that they can get direct feedback from the coding agents and CodeRabbit and iterate very fast. It's a big enabler. In terms of typical ROI, and this is going to be dependent on region, territory, company, but in general, we found a 50x return on investment. And Madhu talked a little bit about that return on investment, but I am confident that any organization that is committed to doing AI at scale, we can help solve that. And I believe that we can serve as those guardrails and also return that 50x investment. This is the report I was talking about. So if you haven't, take a picture of the screen, go download it. Great report, like I said, it's probably 10 or so slides, talks about what we're seeing across a large customer base, and would love your feedback on this if you're seeing similar things or anything different. And then if you want to try it, we have a free trial, or we have a bunch of our team members in here that we can work with you on a strategic level. It's really easy to get set up and start using it. I'm not a developer, and I can set this up in 5 minutes on my local kind of GitHub and run a bunch of PRs and get feedback instantaneously. So it's not complex, something that you can do, and something that we'd be happy to advise you on. And that's it. I'm happy to take a few questions. We have about 2 to 3 minutes, so probably 3 or 4 questions if there are any, and go from there. Yes.
So in that picture you're showing, the entire conflict funnel is in the enterprise, and only the relevant data goes out. So you have an agent. I didn't understand, because every time you have to recreate it.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's a great question. So for every individual PR, pull request that comes in, we are actually going in, each individual one is creating that individual sandbox, and it's going and pulling all that context in. So each individual one is having its own sandbox, which is good for data isolation. It's also ephemeral. So once the review is done running, typically 10 to 15 minutes, it's fully discarded, and none of that data is stored. We also have strict zero data retention policies with both providers, OpenAI and Anthropic. Not today. So you can use MCP to provide the information for the context window, but not to run. Yeah.
The other thing is, does it assume a monorepo? Right?
It can work, and we've seen success across monorepos as well as microservice architectures. So it really depends. I think in the case of Swiggy for Madhu, at least what I gathered from our conversation the other day, was they're in microservices organization, and they actually, one of the few companies I've seen actually achieve this, where they've, since AI adoption, they've reduced the number of microservices significantly, which he said has been hugely valuable. So it works across any type of monorepo microservice. Great questions, thank you. Any others? Yes, sir.
They don't allow to go code out of the enterprise boundary, right? I think she touched upon that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of setup we can have that the code cannot go outside the enterprise boundary? Obviously, we are like neck-to-neck partner with Microsoft, right?
Mm-hmm.
We deal with Microsoft day in and out. So, but we have our whole enterprise server sits inside our own network boundary. So what kind of setup you can do there where the code cannot or should not go or must not go outside the enterprise boundary?
Yeah, I think my short answer is I would love to have a discussion with the security team just to understand the concerns, right? It's all risk reward and trying to understand where the real risk is.
Because you are going to the OpenAI, right, which is
It is a network
public
call out.
endpoint, right?
Yeah.
So can we set up something inside the organization boundary? Because right now we run the instance of OpenAI inside the Azure boundary.
I see.
Right?
Yep.
So can we talk to that endpoint instead of OpenAI endpoint,
Yeah.
which goes outside the public, outside the Chevron enterprise?
Yeah, makes sense. So again, you're still making a network call. It's just not going to OpenAI, it's going to Azure. So there is still a network call, but in short, we do have a way of deploying. We should speak offline with that, our team, like Nitin and Mayur and so forth, but there is a way where we have our application in a Docker container that we ship to you, and then you have to bring your own keys for Azure OpenAI, and that would then keep that all internally. So there's always technically a way to do it. It's available. I'm a big proponent of not doing that just because of the operational overhead. And I know, look, from a security perspective, I don't need anything to leave my network, but I've been doing this a long time. Every time an organization says we'll run it ourselves, it's never good for me as the vendor or the end consumer. And it's probably not cost effective, right? You have to have a team that manages it and so forth. So we're welcome to talk about it.
We have time for just one last question, please.
Yeah, so I think you'd scale it horizontally and vertically. So you'd have multiple kind of Docker images. We can review the architecture with you. But in terms of scalability, like, am I concerned or do I have any qualms about it? I don't, right? If I got the CEO of the largest company in the world telling me that it's rolled out to 20, 30,000 developers, I'm not concerned. So I think we're very confident that this is a battle like tested solution. In terms of the specifics, that's going to be organization specific, where we have to understand, how do you scale, what are you using under the hood, but it would probably scale out horizontally, multiple containers.
Just a curiosity question. There are companies who's been providing an autonomous agent for the coding development end to end, but CodeRabbit, up to my understanding, what I got it now, it is only the code review tool, right? Will that be affordable for the companies to provide, to get two different tools for autonomous workflow automation for the code implementation and code review for the CodeRabbit? Just to try to understand how this is going to work out in the
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think, does it work? And yes, will it work? We can make it work. I mean, the CLI is an enabler of that, and there's other mechanisms that we can do. I think having separation of duties there is important, right? Like, I think you should have the thing that's writing the code, write the code. You have something else independently review the code. It's like the student submitting his paper to the teacher. Like, if I ask the student to review his paper, they're going to get an A+. Every single time. They're perfect. And so I think that independence is important, but I think the other part of that is that agentic process. We're going to continue to see that, right? And it's going to continue to evolve, and systems are talking to systems where maybe a human is not in the loop anymore. And so the PR is actually that one place where you can still have that governance and say, look, everything else is autonomous, and you still have that first pass review, but also have that human give it the final stamp of approval. Great question. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Big round of applause for Michael Fox. While we get ready, what we've heard so far is AI can accelerate development, but scale demands discipline. Guardrails matter more than ever. We're going to take this conversation further. We've put together an incredible panel of leaders who are actively building and scaling complex systems in production. Before I invite the panelists, I actually want to ask Michael, since it's his first time to Bangalore, what good food have your colleagues been feeding you in Bangalore, and is there something that stands out for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm learning about the differences in cuisine from the north and the south and everywhere. So that's been a real privilege. The one thing that I actually really enjoy is I try and travel through like the rickshaw. And so I've been trying to take that a lot, and I've learned to negotiate a little bit. So it's been good.
The fact that you could get a rickshaw to say yes to take you, that's privilege. Come on, Michael. Well done, well done. I hope you get some filter coffee, though. Lots of filter coffee in. Fantastic, thank you. All right, so let me introduce the panelists who are going to be engaging in an interesting panel discussion. To moderate the panel discussion, I obviously would like to call on stage Rohit Khanna, VP Engineering at CodeRabbit. And introducing the panelists, would request all of you to come on stage as well. Sarat Butiraju, Chief Architect at BigBasket, Sridhar Gade, VP Engineering at Freshworks, and Akash Agarwal, VP Engineering, Media.net. Together, they're going to explore systems that think, the future of scalable self-learning platforms. Rohit, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. Cool. I have a great panel lined up for you guys. I'll quickly introduce them. So we have Sarat, Chief Architect at BigBasket. We have Sridhar Gade, VP Engineering, Freshworks. And we have Akash Agarwal, VP Engineering, Media.net. So please round of applause for this esteemed panel joining us today. And before we get started, I wanted to ask you guys a couple of questions, right? Since you've been hearing so far, would love to hear from you. What AI tools are you using? Is anyone using coding agents, Claude? Show of hands. Okay, pretty much most of the room. But would love to hear from you guys on a tool that's adding value to you that you think people are not aware of. And the tool that nobody's aware of will get a gift from us towards the end. So yeah, if you want to go ahead and name the tool that you think is adding value to you. AMP? Has everyone else heard of AMP? AMP code, right? I think that's popular. Anyone else with something that's not as popular? Yeah, Roo is a good one. I think Roo is probably, anyone familiar with Roo? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I think we got a winner. So please do come to us at the end. We'd love to give you a prize. Anyway, let's get into it. So we're obviously going to talk about AI, because that's all we're going to talk about this year, till everyone uses AI and gets a lot of value from it. And the interesting thing with AI is enterprise is actually adopting to it faster and better, right? Which is actually the flip, which has never happened before. You never see enterprises wanting to jump on software or the new trends, which is really exciting. On the other side for me to watch. But yeah, would love to hear from the panelists on, what's your experience been with AI? If you could talk about one specific initiative or experience, on how it's changing how you're building software, how for yourself or the customer, right? If we could all just go one by one and talk a bit about that.
Sure. I mean, obviously, like everyone else, we are also learning and trying to see how we can fit in AI into our development workflows and so on. But on the customer journey, right? So BigBasket is an online grocery app, multi-commerce, quick commerce app. So one of the big problems that we deal with is how do we make our customers aware of the products that we are carrying in our assortment. And typically, you use search and recommendation systems to sort of surface the products. And this is an area where there's always like a small gap where the customers search with a certain intention, and we need to find the matching set of products that are likely to meet the need. It could be a search like, I'm looking for a gift for my dad. It could be something to decorate my wall for Diwali, things like this. And this is one area where we've been actively looking to see how AI can help us. And we've taken sort of a multi-pronged approach over here. We use AI, first of all, in content generation heavily. So product images, product descriptions, tagging the products, associating the products to sort of a category hierarchy and category tree. So doing all this prep work so that the catalog becomes easily discoverable is heavily today done by AI tools, AI workflows. There is sort of a human in the loop, but you could assume that 90% of it is automated using AI. Now, in the customer search itself, taking a customer query, handing it off to an LLM, asking it what is it the customer might really need, and then searching our catalog and surfacing the right product. That is a journey that we are currently experimenting and building. There are some challenges there because we need to do this like within a few, like say, 500 milliseconds, and typical LLM calls take longer than that, the complete round trip. So there's some engineering challenges to be solved there, but we've started to see interesting results. So and there's going to be more of AI coming in the customer journey in the next few months.
Awesome. So at Freshworks, our core product lines are like one is in ITSM, Fresh Service, right? And the other is Fresh Disk, which is into customer support. We started innovating on AI. It was called machine learning, right? Probably since 2015, 2016 is when we got really serious about it. By using machine learning algorithms, we started like automating a lot of workflows, creating hyper personalization for our customers. So it feels not like a static code, but also like a little more innovative in terms of what exactly where they come from. You're talking about 70,000 customers in 120 countries. You're producing your product in 40 different languages. So this kind of really helped us. But then I think 2022 is when we started looking at the generative part of it. So we started with something called Copilot, augmenting a human agent's capabilities through AI, where in everything that they try to do, for example, a customer of our customer is pinging the customer, asking for a question, and then this agent, human agent, would actually use AI to summarize all the issues that are there, or probably like summarize a better response to be able to resolve the problems faster. Then we pivoted into agentic, and where are you literally replacing the human agent with the AI agent, where they actually have the context, they know exactly what the customer is looking for, but they also do not just the retrieval, but the guardrailed or guarded actions. And then we started actually solving the problem, and we started capturing something, a OKR called deflection. Right. So this has been our journey, like pretty fascinating so far. This is in our products. So eventually, in 2 years from now, there won't be any concept called Copilot. It's all about everything is agentic. If you want to call it Copilot, you can still call Copilot, but behind the scenes, under the hood, it'll be a autonomous, self-thinking, self-reasoning agent trying to do a lot of stuff just like a human would do. And then there is also innovation happening inside Freshworks, where, hey, if you're a Ferrari manufacturer and your dealership dealer or your salesperson is actually driving a Honda, it doesn't look good, right? So there's so much AI in your products, and how about AI sales, marketing, customer support, HR, talent acquisition? So we came up with a product called Cloud Wars. We call it Cloud Wars, but it's more like an AI playground which has access to more than 20 different models, but they can also go and build their own agents. I'm a marketing or a salesperson. I do prospecting day in and day out, and with zero coding or AI knowledge, I could go and build an agent which I go to bed and it does all the prospecting for me, and it does the market research. And when I wake up, it tells me, hey, here are the 5 customers in Bengaluru that you could go after, prospects. You'll have a very good chance of actually winning these deals. Stuff like that's one example. We have like close to now, I think 150 plus agents running autonomously, built by completely non-technical people at Freshworks.
That's really impressive. Hey, so EdTech is all about like Media.net, all about EdTech. Basically, we are having hundreds of billions of requests every day. And if you know the EdTech, what the advertiser want, they basically want to get the right kind of prospective audience, right? And they have their objective. So earlier, what used to do means people are having their objective. They talk to account manager look at the data. Like the data is like huge, like terabytes of data. They figure out what kind of targeting or filtering fits for their campaigns, right? But now it's not like that. So we have built applications which are not only like a chat box for you, which are basically outcome based. So when it's outcome based, you tell me, for example, that Freshworks tell me that I want to target some mid-tier company VPs who can basically interest into a Freshworks kind of a product, right? So they don't have to do anything. We know that what kind of audience you are targeting for, what kind of contextual segments you may want to target for, and you don't need to like figure out these things yourself from like thousands of data points. We are making these packages, everything for you using the AI actually. So this helps in a lot of things. This helps the time in starting and building a campaign from like days to minutes. It also helps the people getting the real-time insights on that, what they are actually looking for, what the outcome of this particular very, very targeted and segmented audience, as compared to first you are running out a very broad segment, and then you are saying, okay, I spent $1,000, only $20 goes into the actual person who can be a prospective customer. So these things, so outcomes are like very, very very, very super efficient now as compared to back in the day. And I think everyone in the tech world in general like doing something on the AI, but they are basically chat-based application in place of like actually the outcome-based applications. So this is something over there on the customer side of things. Even internally, we are like having, it's not only about assistive AI, which helps you generate more code or faster code. It's also about AI native mindset, that how you can use AI in building your product in place of just like asking them to give me a code snippet or build me a prototype or do a POC for me. But in place of that, how can I use AI, which is a core of my product as well? So this is the kind of shit which we are seeing in past couple of years, and they are obviously like giving a lot of in not only delivery speed but also the efficiency in the system in general. So yeah, that is it.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think it's evident, right? Like, and fascinating to see all these companies, large enterprise also adopt AI with these real world use cases. Um, One interesting question that comes up a lot is the future, right? What is the future of software engineering? How does the role evolve? If we listen to, the model companies and their CEOs, they said 6 months back we don't need engineers anymore, but they seem to be hiring more engineers than ever. Like Dario again said that I think in 6 months to 1 year we'll not need software engineers, but they are hiring a lot. So wanted to understand how you guys are looking at this. How do you see the role of software engineer evolving? Do you think we'll need software engineers? Like, how does this, what's going to change? How do you see things change in the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I'll start, I'm sure. So if we just look at where we are today, right? Like you have AI coming in and bringing in massive gains in the coding phase and probably the testing phase that follows. But if you look at the end-to-end SDLC, starting from what to build, there's still a lot of human involvement there. You're not going to an AI and saying, let's say BigBasket today does online commerce and wants to get into ride hailing. I can't go to AI and say, okay, from tomorrow I need to do ride hailing, do whatever is needed, right? We're light years away from being able to do that. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, let's say the BigBasket website goes down. No one's calling up AI. I get called and I need to get on the call and figure out what broke. So the two ends of the spectrum are still gated. I won't say gated, but there's heavy human involvement that continues to be there. There might be more AI coming in. Like today, I need to understand every line of code, irrespective of whether it's generated by AI or humans. Because if something breaks in production, I'm responsible for debugging it and resolving the issue. So there might be more tools coming in other phases of the life cycle. A company like CodeRabbit might decide we'll build a debugging agent or we'll build a production support agent. So those things will come in, but at least in a 2-3 year horizon, I see that AI will probably automate 10 to 15% of an engineer's work, maybe 20-25 tops. If that engineer is spending a lot of time only coding, then yes, a good part of his workload would be automated. But otherwise, there's still this good 60-70% of time where the engineer is thinking what to build, and then after something's built, how to deploy, how to monitor it, how to operationalize it. I think that will continue to remain to be the forte of engineers for a while to come. Of course, it's unpredictable, so let's see.
So you're definitely growing your teams.
I'm sorry?
You're definitely hiring and growing your teams.
So we're trying to keep things flat. But again, this is a changing space. So as much as we can do with the teams that we have, and we are trying to bring in AI to gain these efficiencies where we can, so that we free up engineers and they can start bringing in value in other areas where today AI doesn't. So that's the position we are at right now.
Yeah, I think this is a fundamental question, not just in engineering, but I think being asked everywhere. So I also speak a lot in colleges, and they say like, oh, what do we do? Like we're in computer science, and 3 years later, like if the jobs don't exist, like is it too late to make any career decisions, right? And rightfully so. So the standard thing I keep telling people is, hey, AI doesn't take away your job, but a person knowing AI would definitely do so. But like just on the engineering side, if you just zoom out, the reason development or the coding languages were invented because we couldn't talk binary, which only computers only understood like binary language. So you had to create these high level and low level languages and interpreters which will actually interpret ultimately your purpose into a code that machine understands. But fast forward to 2025, now you have systems which has neural networks and who could actually respond based on your natural language input. So in that case, then do I really need all these languages? Because it can convert it to whatever language that the system is looking for. Today we have a CPU-based silicon, we have GPUs, and then tomorrow probably quantum. But we don't need to worry about what is under the hood. So in that space, I would say that I think we were so much engrossed into how do I do like how part. Now it's about why part. It's like, do I know my customer well? Do I know the use case well? And am I building the right product for right set of customers? So I would say they have to become a hybrid engineer slash a product leaders where everything that I'm doing, what is the purpose and understand so that I build it well. So my customers are equally happy and the whole investments that you're doing in customer success, and there are so many new branches within the customer support, customer success, and I think all of them should, I think, kind of reduce. So I would say, yeah, fundamentally we need to know engineering because that's how we do stuff, right? But purpose-driven engineering, where the execution part, the building part, can be actually offloaded to the AI. So we will still hire engineers, for foreseeable future until we hit the AGI, the singularity. Hopefully not before 2030, but until then, at least I think these things will be relevant.
Yeah, I think in couple of years, I will take it like in two parts. One part is that what will engineers do after like in 2028 and how the AI will change the whole workflow, right? So I like totally resonate with both of these guys that we still need engineers who can understand code. I think we are not in a situation where we can say, okay, this is a problem statement, you do deploy, do everything. And there is still a human in the loop who basically knows that what is written over there. For example, if something is breaking on production, you cannot like just give it to AI to fix it and deploy again in the production. You still need someone who understand the architecture, understand the code and all that part of it, right? So we still need those people who understand, can write code and understand code, right? Now, second part of the question is that what will engineers do after that, right? So you see, don't see AI as a competitor. You see AI as an engineer who is like elevating the bar for junior engineers, and I would say changing the floor for senior engineers also, right? So the engineers will be more onto the architectural side of things, on system engineering, on distributed system. They should have their core. They understand the core concepts like memory management, distributed systems, architecture, what to build as a microservice, what not to build as a microservice, what you want to have in kind of a monolith and things like that. So I think that will be like more, the engines will be like more focused on those areas in place of just writing coding. Or if you see, go in the colleges, right, like out of 10 interviews 9 would say ki, my forte is competitive programming, right? That is gonna vanish. That is not gonna valued a lot probably in next 5 years, right? The people need the core strength of you, right? That okay, you know coding, right? But probably we may not need people who only knows good coding or efficient coding, right? We need people who know the deep inside of the system engineering, architecture and all. So I think that is like will be the more focus area for the engineers who like knows everything in place of just coding part of it. So that's how the landscape will change probably once AI at the full forefront of all these things.
Interesting. So jobs are safe for a bit, a little while. But they evolve, right? I guess the industrial revolution, what happened, people were in industries before and they were like factory workers, and now we're like, okay, what are we going to do next when internet came along? But here we are, right? We all have still so many problems to solve in the world, right? And I think Jensen said that as well, that he's like, he doesn't want his engineers to code. He's like, I want them to solve problems, right? And the world is still filled of so many problems. If you could share maybe your personal stack of AI tools that you like using, and maybe one tip you want to share with the other leaders in the room here on, any trick or any initiative you think can help other organizations as well.
As we have seen, a lot of people are already using AI in their workflows, either for code generation or validation and everything. But I think one thing is very important. I think Madhu also talked about that. That standardization is very important because if you're having like 20 different teams and every team has their own suite of products, own suite of things, it's very difficult once you want to integrate these things in general, right? And the other part of is that validation, guardrails, especially if I want to talk about the edtech industries, the compliances are a big thing, right? You can be sued for billions of dollars if you are not following the compliances across the globe. So I'm not sure right now that you can leave everything on those compliances part also to the AI or not. There should be someone that who have those kind of specific guardrails, who can have those kind of policies and standard setup, and can build a system where AI understand to work in those boundaries, because that is super important. And yeah, means if you want to like embrace more AI, I would recommend you embrace more, but you should not be like fear that it will like eat up roles or jobs. It will basically help you making better decisions, moving faster, and but in when you are like having the right kind of guardrails and compliance and policies with your tools and agents in collaboration. So I think that is the idea. I would say means make sure that you are not like going into that thing 100% from day one. Test things out, test multiple products, see that what is suiting your requirements, and then take a collaborative decision, not like a biased decision based upon that, okay, just on the price or just on the efficiency, because it should be a suit of all the requirements of your business organization, and I would say technical requirements as well.
Could you share your stack, like some tools you found very useful, you've adopted?
So we use a lot. For example, not only for the, so for example, we use like Cursor, and we use IntelliJ IDEA as one of the IDEs in general for us. So we use Zuni over there. So Cursor and Zuni are a big thing. Other than that, we already have an internal thing called Fast Router, which is also like going as a product in the market very soon. So that Fast Router also help us like trying any agent, any LLMs and all, and that is something which is kind of integrated in all our workflows today. So basically that helps you like work with multiple LLMs, multiple AI agents and all. One thing is which I am still exploring now is looks pretty cool is something like Open Hands, which is basically I think Open Devin earlier. So it's not only assist you in coding, it basically does everything for you. Just give it the right objective, it will like run code, do code reviews, deploy it, and it will make a full-fledged application for you. So I think that's still I'm exploring, but that's something probably a good thing to play around with.
Yeah, so I think we're using pretty much the standard stack like Claude and Cursor for development. Probably a bit risky to talk about this in this room. We built our own code review agent. we used AI to build it. And again, no good reason. Like we just thought we could. It was easy enough to try and build one, and it sort of got popular in our developer group, and it's working okay. But coming back to like what I'd like to talk about in terms of effectively using AI or AI tools is just be willing to revisit some of the assumptions of the past where you built software primarily for humans to read, edit, and modify. Because certain abstractions that we do, right, like we break up an algorithm into 7 or 8 functions so that an engineer can not look at the details of something and look at the others, right? We break up an application into APIs and microservices. Now all those things which were done with multiple intents, but one of them majorly being not to increase the cognitive load on the software engineer, they probably are no longer relevant if AI is going to do 80% of your edits. Like, you don't want to hide away business logic behind an API and make it harder for your AI tool to get to it. Rather, a monorepo where it has access to everything might work better, right? So, I'm not advocating that it's death for microservices or anything extreme like that, but there's the standard ways of working that we've sort of learned over decades, which we gradually need to unlearn and see what works better for AI. And I think we all need to go through that journey.
Yeah, very insightful.
Yeah. So last 3 years has been probably I learned more than my 25 years of overall experience. That to start with, right? So we have advice in terms of engineering, product management. How do you actually price your product? How you get the adoption done, and how do you actually do GTM well and everything. But I'll just probably cover on the engineering side mostly. What we learned is totally second is platform first approach. If we have 1,400 developers, if everybody goes online and start actually using different models, or now with the agents, it's going to be a chaos. So first thing we did is centralize everything. We basically, there's a single team which does model evaluation and then actually supplies. And then there's also a single team which actually built an agentic playground framework using LangChain, and then a homegrown vector database based on open search and so on and so forth. That helped us developers to focus on identifying the problem and building it rather than like continuously. It's like a kid in a candy store of all these new tools that are there. So we try to actually reduce that distraction for the team. One cool thing we built among many things is something called a model fabric service. So what it basically does is it's like a very intelligent, like a layer 7 plus load balancer. So every developer historically, like what we built, has to hit an LLM or hit a self-hosted or the managed LLM or an agent, right? Rather, they will hit the MFS. MFS on the fly will actually define type of prompt you're actually giving. At that time, it looks at the capacity or latency and everything else, and it can actually intelligently route you to the right model, right? So for example, I'm hitting a GPT 5, and then like it's like reasonably it's good, and then suddenly you see the latency is increasing, it immediately switch to mini. The accuracy will go down by about 10-20%, but the speed will go up by like 5x, right? And then it will actually switch back. So this is actually in play for last 6 months. So it's able to do based on latency, sometimes cost, sometimes accuracy, sometimes how we ground things. So MFS became a single endpoint for the users to the internal engineering users to actually be able to abstract what is happening under the hood, and then our team basically does the whole agentic, the building, and then what it does use in the behind. Like, do you use a self-hosted Llama or like managed cloud, so on and so forth. From the tools perspective, we kept it open. We started with the GitHub Copilot. When we hit the 1,000 licenses mark, then the cursor came by, then Windsurf. Then we finally decided we'll keep it open. Any developer can have at least 2 licensed tools. The IDEs. And then on top of it, then we have a tool called Highwell, which actually does the developer. It basically tracks the productivity, the metrics, and that's how we came to know our overall review time is actually longer than the coding time, and that's when we started actually engaging with the CodeRabbit. We met them in reInvent, and then we're actually doing a collaboration with them. So, but I think long story short, we wanted to invest upfront, like front load the investment on AI and give them an opportunity to the developers to be able to actually experiment. At the same time, use platform approach and guardrails to be put a method to madness. So you focus on innovation, and AI continues to be a tool, not a playground.
That's very interesting. Good takeaways for everyone here. I think guardrails, platform approach. Switching gears a bit on hiring. How do you guys look at talent now? How do you assess it? Are you looking for AI native talent? If somebody is not using these tools, is that a disqualifier? Has your interview process changed? Are you using AI to screen? Would love your thoughts on some of these aspects.
Yeah, one of the things, at least I have started doing, and a lot of folks in my started doing it, especially with coding interviews, I'll just stick with that, is switch from asking the candidate to write code and instead give code to the candidate and provide open-ended questions like, what do you think is missing? What could break here? What would you change in this code? And I think that is giving us more data points to, evaluate someone for a role than simply, asking the person to write code, which is in real life not going to. We haven't yet gotten to giving candidates AI assistance to develop code, but that's something we're actively considering.
So we are not using AI into the process of finding a candidate or interviews and all right now. But AI is kind of a must-have for a person to know, and depending upon the level. So for example, if I am hiring a fresher out of a college, it's like generally they have some self-driven projects or college projects which have some AI elements into it and all those things. But as the things grow, like if you're hiring a manager or senior manager, you want to understand that how they have integrated the AI workflows into their own team, right? Because right now AI is not an optional thing. It is something which is a integrated part of the overall software generation journey and everywhere actually. So you cannot just like not hire people and they say, "Ki, okay, I have 10 years of experience. I will learn on the job that what kind of tools I use, what kind of things I integrate." That's not going to happen. Uh, if you're having two candidates which are like very close, the someone who already knows AI obviously has an edge. And yeah, so that is it. But yeah, I think there are a lot of companies and a lot of tools which are right now having. It's from the resume screening, and not only resume screening, like they are doing full end-to-end coding interviews by an AI agent, and that is a real-time experience. So I think those things I am assuming is gonna catch up very soon in a lot of hiring decisions. As soon as people have their trust that okay, a AI interviewer can do a better interview than a human, I think things gonna change very soon. So that is one part of it. The other part of it uh, is not only about the technical evaluation. The other part of it is about the culture fitment, the empathy part of it. I don't think that all those AI agents are at that level yet because that is a very very important mix. Like you never hire only the best talent. You hire the best mix with the right kind of talent, right? Which is very very important. I don't want to hire a software engineer who thinks that I am the best and I don't go along with the team, right? Probably that may be my worst hire in place of my best hire. So I don't think that all these AI interviews and all are still at that level because that is a very very integral decision of your overall hiring process actually. So yeah, but I think things gonna change very soon. Not like next year, then probably in next few years for sure.
So at Freshworks, I think we had to transform our entire recruitment process, including the talent acquisition team. So we had to retrain them on how do you actually look at the candidates, and we built a homegrown agentic solution which actually does go through 10,000 resumes on LinkedIn, and we have a ATS called Smart Recruiter, and then actually stack ranks the candidates. Filters it and gives it, and you can actually conversationally talk to it like, hey, tell me all the folks who say they are product managers but they're not.
That's everyone, right? I'm kidding.
Or they're system programmers but they're not like that. And it gives you beautiful reasoning. Hey, I went through all the projects and everything else, but everything looks like a web development, not system programming, based on the tools and everything they use. So, and also how they actually put, just with these 2 pages of resume, it is able to actually mind read. So that's on the tooling part. But I think from the interviewing perspective, we put the engineers into two cohorts. Like one is roughly 1 to 10 years of experience, and second thing is 10 plus, is right, principal and above. 1 to 10, we look at them as like pure executors. Like we see there is a stress on CTOs to churn out much more code, improve the velocity using AI. They ask questions like, what is the improvement on your AI productivity, your cycle time. If I don't say like at least like a 20 plus, then like I'm not a good CTO, right? So this 1 to 10 years, we are looking at what AI assistants can they take to actually accelerate their coding, not just the coding time, but the review side, like right from the PR generation to all the way up to deployment, and then reduce the rework and incidents in the production. Overall, like quality code generation. So this is one part of it. But this is all about acceleration. 1 to 10 years is all about acceleration, speed, and AI usage, right? 10 plus, we want them to know first principles. More and more the generations like they really don't know how things work. Being an electronics engineer, like seeing like bits and bytes flowing out of these chips, or the TCP/IP layers, like layer 0, layer 1 to layer 7. Now like everything is abstracted, like you don't need to know. But 10 plus years, we also look for the systems design thinking, where can this run, like, because prior to Freshworks, I worked with Microsoft. Every product we released, from the day one, you have 200 million users hitting, and how do you actually build for that kind of scale? So these are the two cohorts we are looking at. So the entire there are multiple tools are we using. Like there is a we have been using obviously the coding testing tools where they can actually code, right? Like you give a problem and code, and we give them the IDE, and then backend we are looking at various parameters like how are they thinking, what is their design principles, what are the different tools and everything else. But now it's more like, oh, what sort of help can they take, right? It's like there were exams where they test your memory, like in 3 hours, how much you can remember and write. But later we transformed to open book exams, like how quickly can you take help but still be able to write good stuff. So now it is in the second phase where we're still learning, but I think and I think like keep learning from our colleagues as well, like how do we do it better.
Yeah, but very interesting. So one is in both categories actually, do you check for AI nativeness? Like for example, now you said now, and this happens a lot, right? Many experienced folks, 10 years, 12 years, now this technology is new. Maybe they still not adopted it, but they're very good fundamentally now. Is that still a...
AI brings, makes the, I would say, level playing field for a person with 20 years of experience or 2 years experience. If I really know what tool to use, it doesn't matter. Maybe 1 year before it mattered because context, most of the tools lacked context. Like I have like terabytes of code sitting there in GitHub. Like these tools did not know what it is, but right now like Cloud Code and most of them actually understand that. So it is as good as you are sitting next to an engineer who worked with your company for 20 years, and the company may be in existence for 4 years, but this person is like that much knowledgeable about your code and everything. So everything is super relevant.
Makes sense. I think we have 4 minutes left. Would love to open it up for questions. I think we have a great panelist here from industry. Yeah, please go ahead.
How do you see or evaluate the explore versus exploit with respect to any new thing that's coming up?
Is it a question for someone specific?
No, general for the panel.
Anyone wants to take it?
I'll probably, yeah. So models are becoming commodity now, but let's take a case of models. So while you have 200 models, if you go to Hugging Face or any of the benchmarking sites, but there are also themes. Like there are, we call them, for example, in generative models, like say Claude or GPT 5.2 is one of the largest models, right? Anything above 500 billion or like a trillion parameters. So that's one category, and then you have Mini and there are Nano, and some of them are actually specialized in coding. Some of them are specialized in like speech recognition, stuff like that. So the categories are actually in single digit, and in each area, then there are like say 100 different models. So once we know the categories that the problem we are trying to solve, I'm trying to do a code gen versus IP telephony versus generating online content. So I will be able to actually choose them. But that was 2025. Going forward, it's all going to be agentic. And depending upon purpose that we are defining a use case, I think you can actually abstract the model usage. I think that will happen. This year we will still talk models, but I don't think in 2027 we'll talk models anymore.
Got it. Thanks.
Hi. So when you're using Claude or Cursor or any of the other models, these models, you have to give access to your code, right? And therefore, they are going to do some type of embedding, or they're going to do some type of indexing, or in the case of agentic, they're going to have access to your full structure of your code. Can you talk a little bit, maybe you talked a little bit about the regulatory issues and the fact that you're basically giving agents or another company full access to your lifeblood, which is your code itself. And in case of agentic, you're giving them access to your data. So how do you reconcile this with the board or like with whatever else, like, regulatory or RBI or healthcare or whatever, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have something that works, then they need to know your code. And they don't do this on your servers. They do this on somebody else's servers for the best models. So how are you kind of like dealing with like the long-term effects of giving everything away?
Yeah, I mean, the very fact that my code is sitting in GitHub, there is a level of trust with another organization that they're not going to give it away. So I think that basic model is what continues to apply. So
especially enterprise is like a private, like, GitHub, Microsoft doesn't have access to your code.
Exactly, yeah.
But there it's completely different. They have access, they know about it, And so it's very different. Like you in enterprise GitHub or whatever GitHub, right? It's private GitHub.
Yeah.
But there it's like they are using it. So do you think that's equivalent?
Yeah. So where the privacy concern is high, like for example, if we have an agent that looks at our customer data, so in those cases we go for a private hosted, like we use Azure to provide us a endpoint where contractually they are not allowed to look at our data, save our data, or use the data for training their models. We don't go to the OpenAI, public endpoint. So that is where we make the differentiation. But for say general purpose, like AI use, we let people use the public endpoint. So that's broadly how we differentiate the two use cases.
My take is thinking that code is mine. I think those days have gone. Honestly, like how much of our code is actually from Stack Overflow, right? Who writes code anymore, right? So, and if you guys actually go through this interview by Satya Nadella saying it become popular or unpopular about SaaS is dead. It's about any applications that are built, like, and we thought that is our IP, will be streamrolled. Like that's what Sam Altman said. Like we will actually build just a click of a command. But what is ours is data, and also your customer data. And this is where, at least from Freshworks, we try to actually protect it as much as possible, and we try to see wherever there is a data interchange or the usage, we try to use self-hosted models which are running on our own GPUs versus only the code part actually goes and comes back. And it's a great question, by the way. And we don't have all the answers. Like security and legal teams are working with us, but we try to see is at this point data, and we actually owe it to our customers to keep it secret or the privacy private. But as far as the code is concerned, I think, like I said, it starts with GitHub, but it's public already.
Basically, at an enterprise level, if you're having that enterprise connects with you, they generally contextually cannot like use your data for some other learnings. And the code and all are always embeddings. If you are like having copying your code or copying your data, giving to a private free LLM models and all, they can still use it. So that is the case. But at an enterprise level, they cannot. That is one part of it. The other part of it is not only about that how they can use your code. At times, you also be very, very mindful that when you are like asking them to generate code, they are not giving you any code snippet, which is basically someone else's IP. So that is something is very, very important. It's not only about that you are sharing your code. When you are using someone else's code, you should make sure that you are not violating any IP rights and all those things, because if it is caught, you can be sued very soon. I will give you some examples also that how this enterprise is handling it also. So we were having a hackathon, and it was a AI-based hackathon. So we gave people the OpenAI keys so that they can use that LLM model. Some of the team was like pretty freshers team, I believe, or someone. They write some code, they use that OpenAPI key into the raw format, and they submit their code into GitHub. Within 5 minutes, that API key was disabled. That we got a mail from OpenAI that this key was exposed in a public repo on GitHub, and we are disabling this key. And everyone was like, after our life, the key is not working, the key is not working. And then we realized even though the team actually submitted into a public GitHub repo. So people are having these kind of checks as well. I am talking about not everyone might be having, but a lot of companies are having these kind of checks as well.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I think we can take one last question. I think we're at time.
Sure. This is Krishna Kishore. I work in a company, iPaaS company called Celigo. I look at some of the AI, DevOps, and the productivity stuff. This is not a technical question, but this is just about how do we deal with some of the leadership mindset while we are going through this AI journey. Especially, we have a fraction of the people who would want to say that, okay, let's enable whole of the engineering with the AI tools so that like we can run much faster pace. There is a fraction of the leadership which would say that, okay, we are bleeding money because of these AI tools. Why can't we whip the developers that we will generate probably a lot of code and probably push a lot of code into the production? But the developers always say that, yeah, I mean, if we actually see the trend also, right, probably there is good amount of code that's being generated through the tools, but really doesn't get into the GitHub or the source code. But then, yeah, there is valid ask from the people who are sponsoring this also. They're kind of seeing that, okay, we are not still seeing that productivity gains. How soon can we really see it? And what are the kind of metrics that you're seeing that we are incrementally there until we really see that outcome-based productivity gains?
I'll take a pass at it. So in terms of metrics, for productivity gains, obviously looking at lines of code is a false metric because you could generate a lot of lines of code. I think a product manager can talk about it, but simply delivering more features necessarily does not mean it's the right thing for the business either, right? So, and then I think Madhu today morning talked about some of the metrics he uses to measure engineering productivity. But that apart, like if overall aggregate improvement apart, at least one key thing that we are seeing and we are able to use as a case to increase AI adoption with leaders who are like, expecting ROI answers is the fact that engineers in my organization today, myself included, are able to take on harder problems than we did like 2 years ago, right? Earlier, if there was a legacy code base which nobody understood, nobody was willing to make any change on that repository because obviously things would break. Now there's a team that's ready to rewrite it in Golang or upgrade the node version of a service that has not been touched for like 7 years. And anyone who's done that knows how difficult it is to do when libraries are expired and all of that. So similarly, people are evaluating new technologies and bringing in latency improvement, scaling improvements, reducing infrastructure cost. So there could be like a search index that costs you $25,000 a month. You sit with AI, get some new algorithmic ideas, you try them out, and you bring down the cost from $50,000 to say $40,000. So I think targeted, don't start with AI. Look at what are those hard engineering problems in your org which you have not yet addressed, and try to ask why. Why have you not done that? And then say, okay, now I'll give this person all the AI tools he or she needs, and now can we address that problem? And if you're getting more hits there, of course you'll fail. AI won't solve everything. But if you start seeing success there, it becomes a lot more easier to, sell AI than looking for aggregate metrics in terms of did I deliver more features or products. That's my take on this whole thing.
I think everyone would agree that the code which you are pushing into production is a very, very small part of the overall development journey, right? So probably 5% of the engineer's time is basically spent into writing the code which is actually hitting a production depot, right? There's a lot of research, lot of evaluation, lot of comparison goes behind it, right? So for example, that recently we were evaluating a lot of serial registration kind of library comparison, right? Which would have taken probably weeks for the team if they are like comparing 10 different libraries. Probably we could have done this in half a day. So it's not only you cannot compare just how many lines of the code goes into production with these tools. It's also about that how much background work you have done using these tools, which solves you like weeks of work or months of work if you look at an annual basis. So I think we should take that also. The other part, I think you mentioned about the cost part of it, right? So if there is a major concern, you can also devise your strategies like that. If it is actually working on the production code, you can probably use an enterprise model or paid model. But if, for example, if you write a comparison code, which is like comparing between two different libraries, you may go with the open source or publicly available agents or chatbots, right? So you can also like manage your cost accordingly. But yeah, you need to figure out that managing that or having some extra dollars, is it worth everyone's time or production efficiency or not? That is like a call which can be taken at your organization level. But yeah, means as Sharath also said, we cannot just look at the lines of code put into production as a measure for this.
All right. I think this has been an engaging conversation, and I think we could go on, but I think we're at time. So do want to take this time out to thank the panelists. Please join me in thanking them. And yeah, that's the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rohit. Big round of applause for Sharad, Sridhar, Akash, and Rohit. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'm personally blown away with something that Sridhar said, how with AI tools, a person with 2 years of work experience and 20 years of work experience pretty much are at a similar starting line. Fascinating, fascinating. Let's zoom in now from platforms to people, from theory to the trenches. Joining us in this conversation are some really insightful panelists. Please welcome them on stage. Sidhu Ponappa, co-founder and CEO of RealFast Prabhu Ramabhadran, SVP Engineering Razorpay, and moderating this panel is Michael Fox, VP GTM at CodeRabbit. The theme is AI in the trenches, how India's engineering teams are actually shipping. Let's have a big round of applause and invite on stage Sidhu, Prabhu, and Michael.
Well, thank you for joining us. And looking forward to this panel discussion. I think the insights we just heard from the panelists before, really insightful. I think we want to double click into the real world and tactical and strategic experiences that both Sidhu and Prabhu have experienced together. And I think it's a really interesting perspective here because they both come from kind of different organizations at different scales and different sizes, focusing on different problems. So we had a chance to catch up beforehand, kind of backstage. And I think their stories are really interesting in terms of how they're going about implementing AI across their organizations and really embracing AI across the company. So Sidhu, I'll start with you and maybe just a brief introduction and then talking about how you're going full autonomous.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sidhu. I've been around the industry for a couple of decades now. I've done a bunch of businesses over those years, a series of startups, both product and services. Ended up exiting to the Gojek, what is now the GoTo Group, about 10 years ago. That became the foundation of the entire product division for the Gojek Group. So scaled that in India for a few years. Eventually, after Gojek listed, I quit, took a break, and decided that I was done with VC. I'm going to start IT services, sensible business, know how to make money. So stable, right? You only solve for hiring and sales. 3 months later, ChatGPT dropped, and that was gone. So I ended up pivoting, raising money. We're a Sequoia-funded startup that is working on IT Services 2.0, which means an IT services business that's built around AI, not manpower.
Cool. Hey everyone, good afternoon. My name is Prabhu. I'm part of Razorpay, lead engineering for Razorpay. Very similar, couple of decades of experience across Microsoft, Google, and a company called Nutanix. Most of it in deep infra, deep tech space. Been with Razorpay for about 4 months now. First time both jumping into an India-based startup as well as on the app side of things. So it's been incredible fun, both understanding the space as well as, just being part of the whole AI revolution that's happening over the last, maybe 6 to 12 months. So yeah, look forward to the discussion.
Awesome. And we talked a little bit about how do you go about, and I think there's a question earlier, how do you go about evaluating the different technologies that are coming out at a rapid pace? I'm curious to get your perspectives on that. I think Siddharth from Freshworks mentioned about the platform. I think we talked a little bit about stage about distributing that. So I'm curious, just your perspective on that in general. Maybe Prabhu, I'll start with you.
In terms of how we think about evaluating platforms, I think the first thing to do is evaluate it, right? I think all of us, especially at a leadership level, we end up being busy with day-to-day problems that we have to deal with, right? So number one, our exposure to technology is not what it should be. But eventually, leaders will have to write checks and make decisions for the company, right? So the first thing is continue evaluating, continue talking to as many companies as possible, and then be as hands-on as possible as leaders. I think that is number one. Number two is, I think especially AI-first companies, the marketing and the noise is way ahead of where reality is, right? And nothing to blame any specific company. Everyone's trying to figure out what to do with it. So I think what we try to do is do detailed POCs with real-world examples, right? Which is not fall for the demo trap, but actually play around with it and see how much it solves real-world problems. And the third thing is it's okay for us to fail, right? It's okay for us to do a POC where the POC works really well, but it's not scaling well. It's okay for us to invest in a technology internally and for it not to take off, right? So it's okay for us to fail because, all of us are rebuilding our muscle memory here. So just continue experimenting.
And you mentioned a very practical thing, which is, a lot of POCs, a lot of testing, continuous testing. Do you feel like learning events like this from peers and other companies in the ecosystem, do you feel like you get that from the local market in general, specific to India? And where do you think that's going?
Yeah, see, yes, I mean, just an immediate example. I think Sidhu and I spent the last couple of hours just brainstorming about different things that he's doing, that we are doing. So some of these discussions are definitely helpful there, right? In terms of broadly industry AI usage, I think just given the sheer number of developers that we have in India, I think usage of AI is extremely good, right? But do we have enough? Have we wrapped our hands around what all we could do? I think there is still ways to go, right? So cutting edge AI first companies, I still feel Bay Area has a significant edge. India is still catching up. In terms of using AI to solve real customer problems, I think India is definitely catching up. In terms of having the right peer group, I think we have enough of us who are burning our hands real time with fire, right? So that definitely is.
Awesome. Thanks, Prabhu. Shifting gears, I know we spoke a lot about like dev tooling, right? We spoke about CodeRabbit, we talked about Claude and Cursor. I'm curious, like where else you're seeing AI being implemented just across the business. And I think, Sidhu, you had a great kind of opinion on this earlier, and I'd love to kind of get your perspective on that for the group.
For sure. So Michael alluded to this, but what you folks need to keep in mind is you're getting a contrast over here in terms of the scale and complexity of a rollout, right? So when I'm talking about this, the way you should look at it is, what if none of the political and people complexity of large organization adoptions existed, right? You have perfect alignment. We are an applied AI company. We exist to adopt the latest technology quickly. So because of that, for me to move on these things is very fast. So I can sort of showcase that aspect, right? Now, for us, we pivoted to Cloud Code. Like my co-founder and I used it for a month after it dropped. That was May through June. By mid to end June, we landed a mandate that we're pivoting everyone in the firm to Claude. As of today, legal review, sales, marketing, recruiting, all runs on this stack. To give you a sense of proportion, like just day before yesterday, we had our first sales demo where the salesperson demoed building an entire Salesforce demo. And those of you who have been in that side of the procurement know how painful those things are, in 18 minutes, based on one customer call transcript. So what I'm trying to say is the stack translates everywhere. It's not just dev. It's the Cloud Code stack, but it's being used across the firm by everyone. In real fast today, it's mandatory. You have to do all your work on top of this stack. We are testing Codex and other things, but right now we are 100% on a Cloud Code, Cloud Agent stack. But however, I should call out that this is changing every quarter. And so I fully expect that by April, we'll be doing something else. Or it may be on Cloud Code, but as you were saying earlier, like 3 months ago, skills didn't exist. Today we use skills for everything. So the way you use the tool, either the tool will change or the way you use the tool will change in a quarter. But yes, this is possible. It's happening today. We're saving thousands of, for example, my first round of legal review is fully automated. That's thousands of dollars a month saved.
The other thing that I heard a lot about today was, we heard governance a lot. And what does that actually mean in a practical, like real world example? I think we acknowledge that the inner loop where developers are writing or generating code, they're debugging, and then they're building. But what about the outer loop that comes after, right? And we heard that several times today. Are you personally experiencing kind of that bottleneck? And where do you think that will go in the near future in terms of, will that get any better? Is it going to get worse before it gets better? I'm just curious to get your perspective on that, Prabhu.
Yeah, I think, at least in my perspective, when I think about the outer loop, it's 2 layers of it. The first one is, hey, code is written, I need to ship, right? I need to land it in front of my customers. Everything that happens after the last line of code to actually shipping. And the other layer is, hey, listen, the non-tech folks that people have to deal with, be it compliance, regulatory reviews, and whatnot. In my opinion, the latter, which is the compliance and security checks, what I see is happening in the industry broadly is, instead of reviewing tons and tons of documents and going through questionnaires, a lot of that is now codified, right? In the sense, the first set of compliance requirements, let's say in our world, what is it that Reserve Bank of India wants, right? What is it that the Indian government wants financial institutions or fintech firms to be doing? A lot of that could now be codified, where I can actually have a skill that does it. as opposed to me going and sitting in front of a CISO who's going to go through, ask questions, and for me to answer, right? I think that part, in my opinion, will speed up really, really fast, right? Because yes, it's a ton of documents, but it could be codified. The path in the other loop is, in my opinion, the hardest, right? Which is developers are super enthusiastic about trying out Claude, pretty much every new shiny little thing. But the teams that are responsible for doing the grungy work, which is, taking the product to the market, they are still behind, right? And that is the team that needs to catch up really, really fast, which is, hey, how do I enable a service to go to production in less than an hour, right? How do I build world-class test infrastructure, which is very, very pointy about what it's going to test, and then push it to production immediately after that? How do I make go, no-go decisions for shipping products to the market a lot faster and not human-driven, right? I think that outer loop, in my opinion, is going to take a little more time, right? And I think as leaders, that is the one that we have to staff with the best of the people.
This is an early opinion and controversial, but the same argument reframed for me is, you are going to have that intermediate, what we are calling the outer loop, is just another way for saying these are the people who are not adopted. And as anyone adopts AI, what ends up happening is your quantity goes up and your quality goes down. And then your success or failure depends on how you navigate that. The vast majority of people at that point give up. And there's a tiny subset that then slowly figures out how to use more AI loops to then improve the quality so that you have speed and quality both. And this is not the work for just anybody. This is extremely demanding cognitively. And I am predicting that 30 to 50% of people are going to burn out on this. As we adopt, yes, there's going to be, to your question, there's going to be this problem where, you start adoption and then you're going to see a mess happen in between. And that's natural. That's going to happen anywhere. It happened when devs did it. It's going to happen when salespeople do it. That's not the issue. The issue is once you get there, how do you solve it? And there is a way to solve it. It takes intellect, it takes lateral thinking, and it takes enormous cognitive effort. And that is going to cause 30 to 50% attrition in the industry in the next 2 years.
That's an interesting perspective. And I think it actually leads into my next question. Being here in the local market, Anthropic put out a report not that long ago that said India is second in terms of the customer base for Anthropic, just behind the US. And I expect that to change in the near future. And on top of that, there was an article in the ET paper the other day that was talking about the shortage of skill set and where that's going to lead in the foreseeable future, and what catastrophic kind of repercussions does that have in terms of the unemployment, or just how do we acquire the talent needed to kind of take this industry forward? And so I'm curious to just get your perspective on just where do you think that's going? Do you think there's enough infrastructure and support both from the government and local tech companies? And are you concerned as like leaders and founders in terms of being able to hire the right talent?
I'll let you take because the serious answer to that question comes from you, because you guys are operating at a scale where I can always hire enough people. Right? I'm a small company. I don't need a lot of people. But I've heard this particular framing multiple times before. Everyone's surprised that India is the biggest consumer. My point is, India is where most of the world's software is made, as of today. Outside of the big techs, the vast majority of the world's software is made here. It is logical that we're going to be the biggest consumers of tokens after big tech, right? So I do want to call that out. There's nothing surprising about this.
I think a couple of things, right? We are desperately in need for good engineers, right? I don't think anything is going to replace having good engineers. I think the work that most engineers don't want to do is what should get automated first. And even for that, we still don't have enough good engineers, right? I'll tell you at least what my hypothesis is in terms of how the talent would play out, right? I think it's a fantastic time for you to be someone just graduating out of college or in college, right? Because you kind of will be part of how software is going to get built for the next 10 years. If you're a fantastic IC, an independent contributor who've grown up building large-scale systems, the fundamentals of what you've actually learned is not going to change, right? People still have to build complex software. And the first principles of building complex software is not going to change, whether it's human written, whether it's AI written. I think what's going to get interesting, which is what we are talking about, is for people in leadership roles, where are you truly an AI first person or are you a naysayer, right? I mean, the first question that I ask in any interview is, tell me, what do you think about AI, right? And then you essentially have a set of people who are like, hey, yeah, it sounds good, but I don't know if I'm going to use it for critical work, right? It's a big thumbs down for me, right? And then from that point on, I ask, okay, where do you use AI, right? If you are a tech leader and you're essentially saying that I use AI to write better emails, to clean up my documents, and that's pretty much what I've done, it's a big thumbs down for me, right? It's at a point where every engineering leader should be running their own pet projects at the least, and should be writing production code at a minimum, right? So I feel if us as leaders, we are not upskilling, leveraging this, then we'd be taking incredibly bad decisions for the company, right? So I think that's broadly the case, right? Is the government supportive? I think so, right? I think, India usually does a very good job of pushing tech, right? So I think there's a lot of government push. There's a lot of VC push. A lot of India founders are obsessing about AI and what it means for the business, right? So I think everything is lining up. The number of engineers who continue to graduate out of India, that's going up, right? So the key thing is, do we upskill ourselves as leaders, and do we pave the way for new sets of engineers to come in and then maximize what they could do both for the country as well as for businesses?
I will plus one that aspect very strongly. Today, leaders who are not spending at least 2 hours a day exclusively using the most advanced tools in the field, irrespective of your background, doesn't matter if you're technical or not, you are no longer going to be in a position to drive an AI transformation in an organization. In fact, almost certainly, whether your team tells you this or not, you're the biggest problem. Unfortunately, the reason for this is very simple. Technology is moving so fast that by the time procurement figures out whether we want to buy this or not, it's obsolete. Which means that the only way adoption happens now is leadership mandate, where we bypass, and there's a good reason those procurement checks and balances exist, right? There's not an argument against that. But the rate of evolution today is so rapid that leaders need personal conviction to commit. That's one. Second, the moment you get that conviction and people start using it, the kind of blood that's going to flow on the streets internally as processes get re-engineered, fiefdoms get broken, transparency appears. You're going to have such a political storm in your organization that unless you personally have a first-hand opinion on how these tools impact everything, you're not going to know how to interpret the feedback that your leaders are giving you about what's happening on the ground. You won't know which side to take, you won't know which cause to champion. You will be left depending on second and third-hand opinions, which are almost always obsolete by the time they've reached you as a leader.
Yeah, and it was interesting hearing that Prabhu, you said you've written more code in the last 6 months than you have last 5 or 10 years, and how the executive team at Razorpay is holding themselves accountable through dashboards and metrics and KPIs to make sure that they are staying at the cutting edge. So I thought that was really interesting. Final, maybe I'll do an extension of that, maybe to Sidhu, just really quickly. India has a very big services industry. I'm wondering if it's seen, AI is seen as a detriment or an opportunity there in terms of the opportunity ahead.
I mean, it's an enormous challenge in both regards, right? Because this is the classic innovator's dilemma. Once you get into the nuts and bolts of the economics of services, you'll realize that a huge amount of how your margin manifests at the end of the year is down to the standard structure of your teams, which assume this many seniors of this skill, this many mid-level people of this skill, this many juniors of this skill. And this is where the margins, of course, the other part of it is the initial sales negotiation, of course. But from a delivery perspective, it hinges on this. And what we're now in a situation is that there's different jargon for it, but the way I was taught is it's called a leverage ratio, right? That's the structure of your team. Your leverage ratios are shifting quarter on quarter as the tools shift quarter on quarter. And this poses an enormous challenge for a scaled up. This is one of the reasons I'm so thrilled that we're not at scale, because if you're at scale on headcount, you're now caught between two very hard problems. You have to adopt tooling and drive process re-engineering week on week, month on month, no longer year on year, 5 years on 5 years. You have to do this week on week, month on month. But now you've got a base of tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people. How are you going to navigate what is now a continuous process re-engineering problem? It's very obvious we have to do it. But at the same time, if we do it, how do we manage the consequences of it? And not as a one shot, we're going to do this every week now. This is the problem that IT services faces, and it's a very genuine sort of Scylla Charybdis, rock in a hard place kind of a problem.
Especially for the larger players that have
100%.
Tens of thousands of
I don't envy that situation at all. I'm so glad I'm attacking this without having to do that, and I'm just going AI native out of the gate. But if I had a large established base, I would be having the same sleepless nights. I'm sure everyone in the scale-ups too.
Really interesting perspective. So as we wrap up, first off, I want to thank Sidhu and Prabhu. Really good conversations. I guess the last question for each of you is just what keeps you up at night with this next wave of AI adoption? What are you mostly concerned about? Not necessarily just the adoption side, but just in general.
I mean, the last couple of weeks, at least, what's kept me up at night is actually having, not trying to gloat or whatever, it's just spending time with Claude is way too much fun, right? In a sense, it's so freaking addictive, right? So if you haven't, the number of personal projects that I've done in the last 6 or 1 week, right? That, my wife is like, what the hell is happening, right? Like, but that aside, I think the weight on our shoulders is incredibly high, right? It's just not what the business needs from leaders. It's also helping build the next generation of engineers in the industry, right? In the sense, we are questioning every fundamental that we assume. Let's say that if you're an engineering leader, how you evaluate people, how you've evaluated people over the last 30 years, 40 years is the kind of documents they've written, the kind of code that they've written, right? And the amount of code that they've churned out. All those things don't matter anymore, right? And how do you do performance now for engineers, right? Managers with primarily, measured based on, hey, listen, are you dealing with complex org problems? Are you growing people now, right? I don't even know if managers need to do that anymore, right? So, and then, unlike Sidhu, we also have 10 years of code that we already have, right? And a good chunk of India's online transactions go through Razorpay, right? I don't want to be one of those guys who says that AI first and only AI and then break, a good chunk of transactions that's happening every day, right? Which is how do you make those decisions so that you're still forward looking, but you don't burn yourself completely in that process, right? I think figuring out that balance, it doesn't keep me up at night, but it truly is exciting, right? I'm truly excited about where we will be as a company and where I will be as a leader a year from now, right? And how do I make the right decisions to get me there?
I think for me, most of this now hinges around, so up until like 3-4 months ago, there was constant fear around how quickly is the horizontal capability of agents going to manifest? Because we're an applied AI business, right? We operate on top of deploying the best tools to extract top line and margin. Right? Our job is to convert these tools into money for our customers and for ourselves. And in this context, I was worried about the horizontal play, right? It was all niche vertical plays, and ID service is a horizontal play. I didn't want to be in a situation where you have to build 100 products across the life cycle to generate. Now the horizontal agent revolution has unlocked that for me. I'm not worried about that. Now what gives me sleepless nights is India now needs to figure out mechanisms to funnel massive amounts of capital into applied AI. Because if we don't, we will lose our #1 export line item, ID services. And the reason we have to pump enormous amounts of capital into this is we have access to the usage to now move forward to build some of the potentially most useful models in the world, if we can dump in the massive amounts of capital required into a sector that is fundamentally non-technical, because IT services are among the least technical tech companies in the world. So there are these two huge changes which need to happen. We need to have a massive influx of capital that is pushing on the applied AI front, and then within 2 years, we need to be operating at the frontier lab level. But those need to be happening on top of India data. And I don't see the rails for that being put in place. Not on the capital, not on the strategy. And that's what gives me sleepless nights.
Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it. So before we conclude, I just wanted to say thank you again to Sidhu and Prabhu for sharing their expertise and insight with us. I think the last thing for me, it's been really exciting to not only have the chance to meet with leaders, but actually use the products that they're building. So, using Swiggy, getting a coffee delivered to me, using Razorpay to pay for certain things throughout the week. So it's been really, really fun and exciting for me, and I've learned so much. So thank you so much, and hope we could do this again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Sidhu. Thank you, Prabhu. And thank you, Michael, once again. Wow, I'm really pumped up after that. All right, as we wrap up, one thing is extremely clear. AI is obviously no longer a cool side project. It's a core collaborator in how software is built. The question isn't whether to use AI. I hope no one's asking that question. It's how responsibly, how scalably, and how thoughtfully we integrate it into our systems, teams, and processes. To close the event, please welcome Nitin Kunammal, Country Manager, India and APJ at CodeRabbit. Nitin, stage is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. I hope, we all have something to... I personally have learned quite a lot, right? We have a room that is full of engineering leaders, AI practitioners, who make the India tech community very vibrant. So I'm so excited to be able to host everyone. And I think, we kind of started thinking about, this partnership with ET. And I want to take a moment to, say my gratitude for putting together such an incredible event, right? And I'm also thinking, we should do this more of like an annual sort of a, retreat where we reconvene and see how things develop over the year. And from today's conversation, I see that a lot of things are going to be, massively changed by the time we reconvene next year. But as we wrap up, right, I also like to, leave everyone with this thought. And I think this came up in our last panel with, Sidhu and Prabhu, that India is standing at a pivotal moment, right? We are not just home to the world's largest engineering workforce. We are becoming the world's most influential engineering decision makers, right? And the opportunity, the responsibility that we all have, it's never been better, right? Just to look at this room, the software that's built by each of you in this room is running a bank in New York, or powering healthcare systems in Europe, or running platforms that are driving billions of users at scale, right? So that's the opportunity that we have, and we are so happy to play a small part in enabling a lot of this for you. Okay, I think we did the India moment already. So the next thing I wanted to kind of touch upon is all this hype around AI. And if you look at just the last 12 months, it's also attracted a lot of pledges or investments to India, right? As CodeRabbit, we are also investing. We have a local team. We have an engineering leader and an engineering based out of Bangalore, right? We have teams to support you, in your exploration around AI within SDLC, right? And one of the things that I wanted to kind of leave you with is, it isn't a question about whether should you adopt AI. Unknowingly, most of the organizations that you come from, they have already adopted it in production, but in a shadow stage. 73% of the developers are using AI tools right now, and 30% have told you about it, right? You can just go online, get access to ChatGPT, Copilot, or Claude, right? So it's already in production, and under 10% are using them with proper guardrails. And this kind of helped me to reflect back to what Madhu said about, speed versus reliability, right? How do we put governance around that AI usage? And that's the role that we play as an organization, as a code reviewer. And a couple of other things that, kind of highlight for me, Madhu spoke about review fatigue, right? How many lines of code, can you effectively review in a day? Actually, we have some research that says about 400 lines of code. I'm not sure you would agree, before the fatigue kicks in, right? So the question is, do you really want your best engineers to spend their most precious time just reviewing code while you can do so much more? And one more, key learning for me was, and Madhu spoke about this, move fast and break things, right? And to move fast, you need the guardrails, You cannot have AI adoption without these guardrails, and I think that would be uh, not something that, except this 10%, right? If you really want to look at, rolling out an enterprise-wide AI adoption, you really have to think about how do we put guardrails around it? How do we kind of, control that within the coding guidelines or the guardrails that you have set? I also want to reflect on, a little bit about the different panelists that we had. We had, Razorpay, we had Freshworks, we have BigBasket, Real Fast, engineering leaders who are running 1,000+ developer organizations, right? And a lot of learnings. And they also spoke about, for example, BigBasket. How do they use AI in catalog search for, the BigBasket application? Freshworks, how do they use AI to hyper-personalize so that they can serve customers across 40 countries in different languages? So there are a lot of these use cases, and a lot of your organizations are already experimenting with it, right? And one of the areas where there is a faster time to value is SDLC, software development, right? And I think that's easy to prove. And again, touching back to what Madhu has just specified about their adoption, like under 1 year, close to about 100,000, 1 lakh PRs which has been reviewed by CodeRabbit, out of which he mentioned 35% of them were accepted. What this means, this is close to 35,000 PRs that a human, your best engineer, don't have to spend time to review. Unlocking them, freeing them to do more strategic work, right? So this is the value we are trying to bring for your organization. And this is a very interesting perspective, and it didn't really come up in the today's conversation, right? The invisible tax on the engineers. So if you think about this for a moment, every time there is a repeated review that you have to happen, or catching a bug later in the production, right? The impact that is that leaves with the your developers and senior developers, your engineering managers, right? Not just on velocity, but on morale, on creativity and trust. So these are some of the things that we haven't really thought about as we adopt AI, and I think this is something that worth considering. How in the exam, again going back to the example of Swiggy, right? You have 2 human reviewers, but one has been replaced with CodeRabbit. Human is still in the loop doing the review. However, a lot of this accountability actually goes into somebody like us, with CodeRabbit doing the review for you. And how do we effectively use that with human in the loop? That makes the difference. Now, I just want to take a moment and reflect on Michael's session today as well. We spoke about how do we do context engineering, right? How do we pull context out of your environment and help you do the review? Now, when we think about our future, what do we want to do next, right? A lot of this context, as Mike covered, it comes from the context that you provide from your organization to CodeRabbit. It also comes from multiple integrations that you enable, right? You're through MCP or through your ticketing system. We pull that context and provide you the review. But when we think about what we want to do is, we also think about where else is the context. The context could be in another repo, right? It could be outside what we have just kind of cloned. So that is one area that we are really actively working. How do we get contexts that are residing, dependencies that are outside your repo? So taking the review to the next level, right? And by doing this, today we are on an average 35%, 40% acceptance rate for the review. How do we take it even further, right? That's something that we are actively working. On the left side, Mike again touched upon this a little bit. Before you actually go ahead and prompt coding agents to generate code, right? And obviously, everybody prompt differently, right? That has an impact on what the outcome the code that you're getting churned out. So the journey, which is before prompting, the planning phase, right? And writing prompt that is easily consumable by an AI agent, right? That is the place, that's an area that we've been actively working. And we have something that is already available in a very early access phase, where we undertake a lot of that overhead on us and help plan and make the planning cycle easier, right? And another use case I want to slightly touch up as we wrap the session today is on the right side, which is around security and consistency at scale. Again, a lot of the enterprises have invested in different tools that help you catch bugs or code or do the code security, scan your code. But you also have to look at when these tools run, right? In our case, if you look at it, it's a truly shift left. When a developer is writing a code in the IDE, we are sitting there on the IDE to do the review and give a suggestion, a fix right there. So the error or a bug is not even entering to the PR stage, right? So catching bugs early in the SDLC, it has an ample amount of impact for your organization as you want to truly shift left, right? And again, I think we had questions about talent, hiring, what can be replaced by AI. But in our case, and in across 10,000s of customers that use CodeRabbit today, we have just seen that, it's just freeing their time, right? There's no human, you still need a human in the loop. It's just freeing the time to do their best work. And there are things that AI cannot do today. Obviously, it is judgment, design, ownership, and innovation, right? So these are some of the things that, I think, would amplify your existing efforts and help you do better, right? And I want to close by just saying that, we have a local team. As most of the AI companies, we are also betting big on India. We have an office in Bangalore. We have a local team. And throughout the session, I heard multiple questions about, compliance, security, right? How do you do it, in your environment without, leaving the network? Obviously, these are very contextual for organization, and we would love to have these discussions. So if it makes sense, we would love, you can always feel free to get in touch with me. Happy to set up some time. Happy to kind of tailor proof of concepts that are, very specific to your organization and for your use cases. And we love to partner with you. Once again, I hope everyone enjoyed the session and we all have some takeaways. I truly have. And I'm truly, obliged to be here on the stage, addressing everyone. And as I said, we look forward to actually doing this over. So maybe probably next year, we'd love to see you again. Thank you again, everyone. Appreciate it.
Big round of applause for Nitin, please. Thank you all for being such an incredible audience. A vote of thanks from CodeRabbit, from Team ET and the entire organizing team. Lunch is served outside. Feel free to hang around, talk to each other. And hopefully there are lots of key takeaways and action items. So you can expand and double click on those as you grab some lunch as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day.